Zoom experience, please make sure your application is up to date. Public members wishing to speak with the City Council can send an email to list-mayor-council@hayward-ca.gov or cityclerk@hayward-ca.gov.
Okay, and with that, I'm going to welcome everybody and call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Hayward City Council, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll be led by Mayor Pro Tem Wahab.
Thank you, Mayor. All rise. We have the flag behind our city clerk, Miriam Lenz, in the window. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes. Good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Present.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Present.
Councilmember Marquez.
Present.
Councilmember Salinas.
Here. Thank you.
Councilmember Wahab.
Here.
Councilmember Cermeño.
I am present.
You, Mayor Halliday.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're all here, and thank you for that. And I will turn this over to our city attorney, Mr. Lawson, to give us the announcement on the closed session.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The council convened in closed session at 5 p.m. today with all members present. Council considered two items as reflected on the closed session posted agenda. First, the council met with its labor negotiating team, and then the council took no reportable action. Second, with Councilmember Marquez recusing herself, as explained below, the council met with the city manager and housing services staff to review a proposed transaction involving the, quote, Cadence property site, close quote, listed on the closed session agenda. The council took no reportable action. Councilmember Marquez recused herself because she is temporarily residing in the Cadence site while her home is being remodeled and under construction. The closed session adjourned at 6:40 p.m. That concludes the report.
Thank you. So that now brings us to a special presentation this evening from two guests that we have at our council meeting tonight from one of our the other public agencies that serves our area and with whom we have a fantastic partnership, and that is the Eden Township Healthcare District. Although I think you actually, well, you can explain that if I put that word in there improperly, that you have changed your name. But in any event, we have a presentation by, or we have here with us tonight, Mary Ellen Faria, who is the chair of the board of directors of this agency, and Mark Friedman, the CEO. And so I guess I will turn it over to one or both of them to continue. Mark or Mary Ellen?
Mary Ellen will kick us off.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Mark and I are here this evening to provide you an update on the Eden Health District's activities and to thank you for your partnership. The Eden Health District appreciates the collaboration and partnership we established with the city to meet our common goal of making community health a priority. The community health focus in the city's general plan and in the district's strategic plan was addressed by jointly providing access to essential services during the COVID pandemic. We have been able to do more together than we could have done individually. Next slide, please. Our partners shown in this slide have helped us in this endeavor. All were very eager to support our community. Next slide, please. I'd like to provide you a brief history of the Eden Healthcare District. It was established in 1948 to build the Eden Hospital, and the district later acquired San Leandro Hospital. We are a special district and are not part of the Eden Medical Center. The district serves 350,000 residents of Castro Valley, Hayward, Fairview, San Leandro, San Lorenzo, Ashland, and Cherryland. We are an elected board of 5 members, of which I am the chair, Pam Russo is the vice chair, and we have 3 additional directors, Roxanne Lewis, Gordon Galvin, and Varsha Chauhan. The district has received no tax revenue since 1976. The district owns 2 medical office buildings, the Eden Medical Office Building in Castro Valley and the Dublin Gateway Building in Dublin. We are affiliated with Baywood Court Retirement Community in Castro Valley. The district has contributed over $30 million to St. Rose Hospital, San Leandro Hospital, nonprofits including medical clinics, senior programs, and food programs. The events of 2020 demonstrated the continuing value of having an independent healthcare district supporting Hayward and the Eden area. The district has taken a lead role in the following: providing COVID-19 response, including contributing $700,000 in financial support for testing, education, and vaccination efforts. In providing health resources and ongoing communication about COVID-19, and created community partnerships and acted as healthcare advisors for COVID-19 clinics. Ongoing grants and community support are continuing as part of a focus for the district. Mark will now make his presentation.
All right. Thank you very much, Chair Faria. So I want to go into a few details of what we were able to accomplish in partnership with all the peoples that you saw logos of earlier. So as a small district, we're very flexible and can make decisions pretty rapidly, unlike some of the larger bureaucracies that we all interact with. So we made an early commitment to obtaining and distributing personal protective equipment. We distributed for free over 150,000 masks to Hayward firefighters, St. Rose Hospital, Grocery Workers Union, SEIU home health care workers, First 5 Alameda County child care workers, Tiburcio Vasquez Health Center, and Eden United Church of Christ, and several others. At a time when the COVID-19 testing center up at Cal State East Bay was in danger of having to close, we came up with a critical $250,000 contribution to the city of Hayward to continue the wonderful work that the city and the fire department have been doing all throughout the pandemic. Your leadership was really an inspiration, and our board felt that the least we could do was provide that support at that critical time, and it was one of the best investments we made during the pandemic. We coordinated a partnership between Cal State University East Bay Nursing Program, Hayward Fire Department, and La Familia. We've worked as clinical health resources and advisory partners to federally qualified health centers and nonprofit clinics. That's our vice chair, Pam Russo, who is a nurse there helping with the intake and processing of people at the testing center. Chair Faria, also a medical professional, nurse and administrator, and Roxanne Lewis, our other one of our other medical professional board members, have put in many hours of great volunteer time. Our key partner in establishing, we were a key partner in establishing 4 COVID-19 testing sites within the district and provided direct care and clinical support. And there you see Director Lewis and Chair Faria on the right, and there are several other directors on the left. We printed and distributed 250 mask-on posters to community groups, merchants, and school districts. And you'll see in that photo, you might not recognize them in the mask, two of your city council members, Alameda County Supervisor Nate Miley, and Director, Vice Chair Russo, and Director Lewis. We've published over 175 issues of our COVID-19 breaking news bulletin. It started out daily for about 7 months, and then it went to 3 days a week, and now it's 2 days a week, every Monday and Thursday. I know several of you are on our distribution list and read it regularly, but it's an attempt to synthesize all the most important local, state, national, and international news, because there's such an abundance of information, and we try to encapsulate a description of each article and provide the link if people want to read more. Now I'll turn it back over to our chair, Mary Ellen Faria. Who's still on mute.
We wanted to share some statistics from the Alameda County Public Health Department COVID-19 vaccination dashboard. In the circle, you will see that the number of people in Hayward that have actually at least one dose of vaccination for COVID. And then in the far right-hand column, you will see how many are fully vaccinated. So at least 77.9% of the population of Hayward has at least one dose of COVID vaccine. And at least 63.6% have both doses of the vaccine, which is very favorable for our city and everybody who lives here. Next slide, Mark. We participated in the first annual Juneteenth event, which was a wonderful event, well attended, and it was a great opportunity to bring services out to the community. We have found that people are more engaged if you're bringing services to them rather than them expected to come in and receive services. Next slide, please. Also, the Eden Health District is a proud sponsor of Mia's Dream Come True Playground. The soft opening was on June 19th. We had the opportunity to participate in this project, and we felt as a board that it was important that we serve all members of our community, and so it was our privilege to participate in this particular project. Finally, I just want to share that the Eden Health District is looking at going to district elections next year. And I'm looking forward to working with the city, and we can do more together than we can do individually. So we hope to continue our partnership and collaboration. And thank you for all you've done for our community. If you wish to contact us, our contact information is below. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I did recognize two of those masked council members, and I believe it was just two. It was Council Member Salinas and Council Member Marquez, correct?
Yes.
That's right. You got it. Yeah. You can see through masks better than I can. Plus, you've been seeing them for a year and a couple of months with masks on.
That's who it was. Yes, they can recognize themselves to.
Right.
So, but yes, thank you so much for the presentation. And I'll just ask if any of my colleagues have any questions or want to say anything. I'm actually, I think not, but I know that we all appreciate.
Mayor, I think 3 of us have our hands up.
Oh, why am I not? That is true. That's because, all right, thank you. Thank you for, that's why we have a mayor pro tem to point those things out. Okay, yeah, now I'm seeing them. Okay, Councilmember Salinas.
Thank you. Yeah, I just briefly wanted to thank and really congratulate the Eden Health District for their leadership. are you, I guess it's Trustee Faria or Director Faria?
Director.
Director. And of course, Mr. Friedman, we are very, very, very fortunate here in Hayward to have Director Faria and of course, Director Russo representing our area. Two incredibly, talented, it goes without saying, nurses, and I, of course, two retired nurses from my favorite hospital, St. Rose Hospital, and just the caliber of expertise and the caliber of discipline that we had coming out of the district in service of the city was outstanding. And the other thing I just wanted to point out is your newsletter. Your newsletter, I get them every day. I think they come twice a day or once a day. They're a lot, but let me tell you, they're outstanding. The content is substantive, and I do take away a lot from them. So thank you for everything you've done for our city, and thank you for really keeping partnerships at the core of your work, because it really does show, and it really has made an impact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you for your presentation. And I just want to acknowledge that Dr. Faria, she single-handedly created our health district at Juneteenth and brought in some heavy hitters and worked with Miss Anna Apodaca and worked with La Familia and Core Bay area and brought in a lot of resources and made Juneteenth really special. I just wanted to give her a huge shout out for that. It was a pleasure serving with you on Planning Commission, and I'm so happy that you are serving us on this health district because you are a vital resource in our community. So I just love everything that you do for Hayward and your positivity, and just thank you again for keeping Hayward safe. And one of the things that I would like to say is that Senior VP Deborah Flores asked the crowd, Senior VP of Kaiser asked the crowd, how many people are vaccinated? And everyone's hands went up. So you guys are doing something right.
Good.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Wahab.
I just want to echo some of the sentiments said today. I think that, the Eden Health Center, one of the things that's important is not only the leadership to really focus on our most vulnerable populations and community members. And I think that's often hard to not only reach, but make sure that it's a success, that people are getting the vaccinations and so forth. I know each of the directors here and some that aren't work incredibly hard just to make sure that they are touching the community and making sure that, the resources and they can pivot as things change. So I just really want to say thank you guys, because the health of our community is the most important thing in our community. And I think that the PowerPoint presentation you guys showed is a great testament to that, but I know you guys have gone above and beyond even further than what a couple of these photos can actually describe. So thank you. And I know many people have been nothing but pleased with the efforts and the service. So thank you to staff as well.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words. We're in the process, like all of us, of planning for our post-pandemic future, please. And so we are looking to accumulate more resources for the community and to address exactly as you said, Council Member, Mayor Pro Tem, the most vulnerable in our community. And it's not hard to identify where those people live. You can get it by zip code, by census tract, and the census data when it comes out will certainly give us more information. But that's really the focus of what we want to do in the future, is work with you and our other partners, including Alameda County, and of course, all the wonderful faith-based and community groups in Hayward that have really stepped up in the pandemic and should be poised to look at the social determinants of health and what we're doing to improve overall health once the pandemic is hopefully in the rearview mirror.
Definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilmember
Director Faria has her mic muted, sorry.
Yes.
I just wanted to thank you again and just reiterate, it's through the partnerships and collaboration that we're able to make it happen for our community. No one of us could do it by ourselves. And so thank you for all the support you provided us as well.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. I also wanted to extend my sincere appreciation to the entire team, Director Faria, Russo. Those are the two I think we're most familiar with, but you really elevated the reputation of the district. I just appreciate you bringing investment back to our community, especially the most vulnerable, and bringing services directly to our most impacted residents. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for all your good work, and look forward to continuing to strengthen our partnership with the city and the district. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Councilmember Domingo.
Marilyn and Mark, thank you very much. Specifically dealing with the St. Rose Hospital, I'm glad that you're able to help our local community hospital, because without it, many of our residents will really have a hard time. So I thank you, and I hope that continues. Very good presentation, and you do a very excellent job for our health. Thanks so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just add my thanks too, because just this past year has really shown, what we can do when we work together and address a real crisis that none of us ever expected 2 years ago we would be seeing. But we have, and we really appreciated the partnership this year. So thanks for coming tonight and making that presentation. And with that, no further council requests. We're going to go ahead and move on, but we do appreciate both of you being here.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to public comments right now, and this is your opportunity to speak on any items that are not otherwise on our agenda, which actually is very lengthy tonight, so I can't imagine what you would be talking about. But no, there may be things that you might want to mention that aren't on our agenda, and so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our city clerk, Miriam Lenz, who will do some additional explanation of what to expect if you are making a public comment.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm going to ask Amber to please show her screen. Wonderful. Thank you. So community members wishing to join the meeting via Zoom can follow the information on the first page of the agenda, which is also displayed on the screen right now. If you are using Zoom to join the meeting, click the raise hand icon to request to speak. When joining via telephone, please press *9 to raise your hand. I will unmute your microphone when it is time for you to provide public comment. And with that, Mayor, we're ready to stop this. Thank you.
However, I am not seeing that we have any raised hands among the attendees for who would like to speak. So after all of that, I think we can.
Yes.
Go ahead. You're not aware of any either.
I'm not aware, but if I may, Madam Mayor, may I make an announcement or a reminder?
Yes, please go ahead. And I think we have one of our council members who wants to as well. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. And if I could please ask Amber to share the screen. It's a brief reminder that the city of Hayward is accepting applications from Hayward residents wishing to serve on city commissions in the Keep Hayward Clean and Green Task Force. And you could see the flyer is on the screen right now. The application deadline is Wednesday, June 30th. We have vacancies on the Community Services Commission, Library Commission, Planning Commission, and Keep Hayward Clean and Green Task Force. For more information, community members can visit the City of Hayward website, and you could see the information on the screen, or they could contact my office at 583-4400. And that will be all, Madam Mayor. Thank you for allowing me to just make that brief announcement.
Okay, and thank you. And I think that Councilmember Andrews would like to make an announcement as well.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to have the council reconsider legislative business item 21023, East Bay Community Energy default product, and would like us to possibly review in July if that's something that the council would consider.
So I'll ask our city attorney at this point. We have a council member who is requesting that reconsideration. What does that require us to do?
Mayor, reconsideration is appropriate at the next regular meeting after the action was taken, which was June 15th. Councilmember Andrews was on the prevailing side of the 4-3 vote. And if there is a second, which need not be from a member of the prevailing side, then the council would vote on the motion. If the motion is successful, then this matter would be rescheduled at a meeting that the city manager would advise on, probably in July. And at that meeting, the council would reopen discussion of the topic on the agenda last week.
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Andrews to do that, and a second by Councilmember Wahab. Did you want to speak to that, Councilmember Wahab, or?
First, Councilmember Andrews, if you want to speak more to it, and then I'll.
Yes, I just want us to reconsider the vote and think about what we're really asking. And I think we were a little lost in the process versus what we were voting on. And I know there were some ideas that were put out, and I think the council kind of possibly got swayed by certain reactions to what was happening with the process versus actually what we were voting on. And so I would like us to reconsider.
All right, and Councilmember Wahab?
Yeah, I think that several items were discussed, and I think that we can make it better for residents as well as moving forward and stick to the goals that we have in place, as well as make a request from the full body of the EBCE. So I'm supportive of revisiting this item.
All right, and so we take this vote right now, Mr. Lawson? I don't see any other council members wishing to speak. I will certainly support the motion, having been on the 3 side of the vote. All right. So with that, on this motion to reconsider that item regarding the East Bay Community Energy default position of the city, basically, that we took last week, that was made by Council Member Andrews and seconded. And I want to make sure, because as I'm recalling, Councilmember Wahab was also on the no side of that vote. So is it all right that she seconded the motion?
That is correct. Any member can.
Okay. Okay. So all right. With that, Madam City Clerk, will you do a roll call vote?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Aye.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes.
Thank you.
Would you, I have to say that my internet is flaking in and out. So Mayor Pro Tem Wahab, be prepared, because I didn't hear all of that. So you'll have to let me know what the vote count was.
So 7.
It was all agreed.
It was unanimous. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I voted, right? I did vote, right?
Yes.
So yes. Okay. All right. So that passes, and we will hear that when again, Madam City Manager, on July.
I think we're going to try and schedule it for July 6th.
Okay.
Because I think it's just given the EBCE's timeline, I think it behooves the council to make a rapid decision on it so we can inform them and they can move forward. So we're going to try and I'm going to apologize in advance. The 3 July agendas are going to be very full. So please, we have a lot of business to cover in July, and so I apologize. And we're actually going to start the July 13th meeting earlier in the evening, just given the items on that agenda. So,
well, that's a good idea. And we will be getting a break after that. So our usual August break. So, okay. With that, Council Members Armeno?
A quick note to our manager, to our city manager. We could meet on the second Tuesday of July.
We added a meeting, and we're still very full.
I'm ready and willing.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. And with that, I think that we are now ready to move on to our action items this evening. And we will start with our consent calendar. Oh, I'm going to close public comments, first of all, because there are none from our attendees. And we'll move to the consent calendar, which this evening is items 1 through 9. Are there any requests to pull any of these items off? I'm not seeing any council members raising their hands. Is there any member of the public who wishes to call a consent item off? And I was seeing a raised hand. Now I'm not. So there I am again. And that is okay. So Madam City Clerk, are you ready to bring our it's Carl Gorange is the caller?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay.
Hello. Hi, I'm not calling to take anything off, but can I do a public comment?
Well, I closed it, but I will go ahead and allow that. Yes. Go ahead.
I was a little confused. Sorry. I realize it's too late for any last minute suggestions, but I just hope staff could keep this in mind for future improvements. This is regarding agenda item 3 on the sidewalk ramps. And yeah,
well, that is okay. That is appropriate. That is a consent calendar item. So go ahead and make your comment.
Okay. Well, this should have been like way in the past. I'm sorry about this. I was riding my bike along Eden Greenway Park the other day, and that was shown in District 4 Schaefer Park area on the map there. So I thought this might be appropriate. The pathway along that park strip is crossed by several roads, and the curbsides do not currently have any ramps, making it harder for wheelchair users and bikers to cross from one side of the path to the other side. So I would just love to see some ramps installed here. A couple of them on Evergreen Street, a couple on Cascade Street, and one on Eldridge Avenue. I realize it's too late for this process, but hopefully maybe for a future improvement, I would love to see some additional ramps here. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the comment. And we will now go back. And I don't think that requires pulling the item off the consent calendar. I think we can go ahead and vote on it, correct, Mr. Lawson?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we will go ahead then. I would entertain a motion on items.
I'm moving the items, Mayor.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Okay, so Madam City Clerk, on this motion by Council Members Armeno, seconded by Council Member Lamnin, on items 1 through 9, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Sermenio.
Yes.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes, and that motion passes with 7 aye votes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, that's good. We'll now move on to item number 10 on which is a work session item.
Mayor?
Yes?
I just want to double check because I don't think I actually set the word motion on an item, and just want to make sure I said I would like to make a motion about bringing that legislative item back. I think I just said I would like to have the council reconsider.
Well, I think we took that as a motion. We took that as a motion. So, Mr. Lawson, are we okay?
Yes, Mayor and Council. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. I said it anyway, so, and you didn't object. So, yeah, and we voted. So, all right, but thanks for the clarification. Okay, so now we're going to move on to item number 10, which is a work session item regarding the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement. And so we're going to hear a presentation and then have a discussion of this agreement as an alternative plan to the Bay Delta Plan. And so we're going to start with our Public Works Director, Mr. Ameri.
Thank you and good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. The city, like other water agencies in California, is finalizing its 2020 5-year urban water management plan. The plan includes projected water demands and information about the long-term water supply availability and reliability. Hayward and several other agencies in the Bay Area rely 100% on water supply from San Francisco. Therefore, availability of water from SFPUC is critical to the city and its supply projections. In 2018, the State Water Board adopted the Bay Delta Plan Phase 1 update. The update requires significantly increased Tuolumne River in-stream flows, therefore potentially significantly impacting and curtailing water available to San Francisco and its wholesale customers, including the city of Hayward. To parse this out and provide more information on the Bay Delta Plan and potential impact on available water supplies, we are fortunate to have Nicole Sankula, CEO and General Manager of Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, with us this evening to make a presentation on these issues. Nicole?
Thank you very much, Alex. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm pleased to be here tonight. If I could ask the city clerk if you could pull up my slides, that would be great.
I'm sorry, I have to look for them. So give me one moment, please.
Oh, do you want me to pull them up?
Yes, yes. Actually, you should be able to.
Would that be helpful?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, hold on just one moment. Right. I realized I did not confirm that with you when we were planning this. So let's see. All right. Can you see my slides now?
Yes.
But not maximized.
They're not maximized. Okay, hold on. There we go. How's that? So, again, thank you very much for having me here tonight. It's truly a pleasure to be able to speak to you, and certainly Zoom makes a lot of this a lot easier. So first, I just want to address kind of the what is BOSCA. BOSCA is a special district that represents the city of Hayward. Oh, I'm so sorry. My screen has gone all crazy here. I bet you can't see anything now. Hold on, let me try again. There we go.
Nicole, I'm sorry.
Do you see it now?
If you stop sharing and then try sharing again, and when you do that, select the one slide that is projecting, that might help.
Okay. Sorry, I am not an expert at the sharing. I'll try one more time. There we go. How's that?
Perfect. Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that. So BOSCA is actually a special district, and we represent the interests of the 26 water suppliers in San Mateo, Santa Clara, and Alameda counties that buy water from the San Francisco Regional Water System. Collectively, these water suppliers deliver water to over 1.8 million residents, 40,000 businesses, and community organizations in these three counties. Hold on. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. tonight. And my apologies. Like the mayor, like try. Oh, there we go. I got it.
Do you want us to share the slides if there's more issues?
No, I think I figured it out. I'm sorry. My staff knows they don't really generally let me drive. They do it themselves. They do it for me.
Got it. You know how to move to the next slide, right?
Yeah, exactly. So here's a list of BOSCA's member agencies. And of course, you'll see the city of Hayward, our largest city on the East Bay area, but also almost the entirety of San Mateo County, and then 8 agencies in Santa Clara County, primarily those that rim the Bay. And again, collectively, they all rely upon the San Francisco regional water system. And here's a map of the regional water system. The supply that we all rely upon, 85% of it comes from the Tuolumne River watershed, which is in the eastern side of the state of California, much of it located in Yosemite National Park. The Tuolumne River flows into Hetch Hetchy Reservoir and is impounded behind O'Shaughnessy Dam. That water is then carried across the full width of the state of California through 3 very large diameter pipelines to the East Bay in the Sonora Hills, where it is joined by water from local supplies from the Alameda Creek watershed in San Antonio Reservoir and Calaveras Reservoir. The pipelines also cross the bay and go around the south end of the bay, and then the water flows up to the foot of, actually into San Francisco to Fisherman's Wharf, collecting water from the peninsula watersheds as well in Crystal Springs Reservoir. The amazing thing is this water flows entirely by gravity and obviously delivers us an incredibly high quality water that has proven historically to be very reliable for our system and for the water customers that rely on it. However, and the reason I'm here today to speak to you is that there are new state regulations that result in significant water supply impacts to this regional water system that we all rely upon. The State Water Resources Control Board was established by the state legislature, and its job is to establish water quality objectives throughout the state to protect the beneficial uses of water. The one we're focused on are these water quality objectives to protect the beneficial uses of water in the Bay Delta area. And the plan has a very long name, Water Quality Control Plan for the San Francisco Bay, Sacramento, San Joaquin Delta Estuary. But it's referred to generally as the Bay Delta Plan. And in 2009, the State Board initiated an update of Phase 1 of the Bay Delta Plan. Phase 1 impacts the rivers that flow into the Delta from what are called the east side, so along the San Joaquin River, including the Tuolumne River that we rely upon for 85% of our supply. The State Board actually adopted that Bay Delta Plan update in December 2018, and the adopted Bay Delta Plan requires significantly increased flows on the Tuolumne River, resulting in significant water supply impacts to all the customers that rely upon the regional water system. That includes the retail customers in San Francisco and BOSCA's member agencies' customers. Stepping back to orient you on the area that we're talking about when I talk about these east side streams. So this is a kind of a map of the central area of California going from east to west. And you'll see on your right-hand side, the Tuolumne River is marked, is circled in red. So this is where our water comes from. It flows from that area. It actually flows north to the Delta. So the Phase 1 plan requires that 40% of the unimpaired flow be released every year, whether it's wet or dry, into the lower Tuolumne River from February to June. This is a really big sentence, so let me unpack it a bit for you. So 40% of the unimpaired flow in the Tuolumne River. What is that? Why is that important? The State Board, one of its jobs is to be the regulator for water rights in the state of California. They monitor and make sure that people use their water rights, no more than their water rights. And when an entity reports on its use of the water rights, it reports to the state board. And generally, that reporting is done as a percent of unimpaired flow, which is essentially the flow that would be in the river absent dams, absent, man's manifestation of changes to those dams. You may actually have heard some news now with our current drought that the state board is actually curtailing or considering curtailing certain entities' junior or lower in priority water rights. And that's part of its job. So this is data that the state board regularly gets, this unimpaired flow. It's a regulatory metric that they're very comfortable with. And so what they're saying is we would require you to release 40% of unimpaired flow every year, whether it's wet or dry, into the lower river. So that would be below New Don Pedro Dam, which is the upper end for migratory salmon. So migratory salmon cannot go beyond New Don Pedro. So that's the point at which we're considering this important. And February to June, which is the time of either growing baby salmon in the river or out migrating salmon that go out into the delta and then out into the ocean. To put it into context, since 1971, the February to June releases in this section of the river have actually averaged 32% of unimpaired flow. In wet years, it's been 60% or more, right? When we have a year in which we have a lot of atmospheric rivers, a lot of storms, right? It's not unusual for the Tuolumne to run very, very high. But dry years, it's averaged 10% or less. So we often talk on the Tuolumne that, average numbers are not very helpful because it is a very wet system and can be a very dry system. The San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, which operates the San Francisco Regional Water System, has an obligation to operate its system in compliance with its policies, including its environmental policies to protect and manage the lands to which they are entrusted to. And as part of this effort, they have closely reviewed the Bay Delta Plan, and they have expressed serious doubts about the Tuolumne River ecosystem benefits that would result from the state board's plan. And there's really two key reasons for this. The first is that San Francisco, along with the two irrigation districts that we share the river with, Modesto and Turlock irrigation districts, have actually done over 200 studies on the river since the early 1990s to really look at the impacts of what's going on in the river and how do we better manage the river. And the state board's plan does not look at that at all. It just ignored that science. The state board's plan also does not reflect the actual existing river conditions or the specific issues in the river. The state board's plan, by being focused on percent of unimpaired flow, just assumes that the river looks like it did before there was intervention from man, when in fact, the Tuolumne River, and particularly in this segment, as it passes through the now developing, more urban areas, but certainly agricultural areas in the Modesto and the Turlock areas, need to be reflected, and the state board's plan does not reflect what's actually going on in the conditions that are going on in the river and what might be limiting the salmon health or the salmon population in the river. So what are the impacts of this plan on the regional water system that we rely upon? And in fact, this is an exact slide that I used to present these impacts to the state board when the state board was considering adopting the plan in 2018. And I find it helpful in this presentation to bring it back because in some respects, it shows that not much has changed since then, right? This is not a new phenomena, but it is also a way to think about it. When I was presenting these impacts to the state board in 2017, We had just come out of what was our last drought, right? And our region responded incredibly well to the governor's call for water use reductions. We achieved roughly 26 or 27% reductions in our region. If this plan was in place and we had a multiple year drought, at that level of demand that we were already at that time, we would have to ration an additional 20 to 30% more. So I think it's kind of helpful for people to remember, what were you doing at the end during that last drought for all of us to achieve those savings? Now imagine having to save 20 to 30% more. So that's one metric that I find rather helpful. A different way to put it, and this is consistent with what you're showing in your urban water management plan, is that at normal levels, right, non-drought levels, customers would need to ration between 40 and 50%, as high as 50% during multiple dry years. Not only are we looking at rationing of 50%, we're also looking at an increased frequency in rationing, where the number of dry years would either double or triple, depending upon the level of water demand. Currently, with our existing system, we're projected to have shortages roughly 1 in 10 years. At a lower level demand, that would double to have shortages 2 in 10 years, or at the higher level of demand, it would triple to have shortages 3 in 10 years. Again, on average, but that's the level and magnitude of impact we're talking about, something upwards of 50% reduction with a frequency possibly as often as 3 in 10 years. In some respects, not that different from the frequency that we're currently already experiencing with our dry year this year. So what do we do about this? What are the options available? There actually is a voluntary agreement proposal for the Tuolumne River that is supported by science, that's been developed by San Francisco in conjunction with the Modesto and Turlock irrigation districts. This voluntary agreement, called the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement, does take advantage of the studies that have been done by these 3 agencies. And it provides that information about the fishery and what's going on in the Tuolumne River with their on-the-ground experience. The proposal really has significant technical support from the Tuolumne River studies. And it includes a portfolio of measures, right? It includes things to improve river ecosystem, so the entire health of the river, but also increasing the number of natural salmon. So as opposed to hatchery salmon, natural salmon production on the Tuolumne River itself. And the things that includes are things like functional flows. So increased flows that are really geared towards the life stage of the salmon that is the problem, the issue on our river at the time that we need to. So like, what do you need in April because of the system and the existence of issues on our river? Restoration of habitat, not just an identification of plans, but a commitment of funds to implement them. A plan for reducing predation and managing invasive aquatic weeds, and also a proposal for better management of hatcheries. And we firmly believe that voluntary agreements provide the best path forward for these very complicated and polarizing issues with significant impacts across the board. When the state board actually adopted their plan, in their plan, there's a framework for voluntary agreements that says that meet or exceed the proposed objectives for the state board's plan. Governor Newsom right now is actually providing critical leadership in negotiations that are being led by the California Secretary of Natural Resources, Wade Crowfoot, and the California Secretary of EPA, Jared Blumenfeld. And they are, along with all the stakeholders, not just San Francisco, so not just our interests or the district interests, but actually trying to move forward on a voluntary statewide agreement. So not just our river, not just the phase one, update rivers, but also the entire Bay Delta. And that's a strong interest of the governors. Unfortunately, I will say that there was no progress. I guess it was in calendar year 2020. There were significant disagreements between the state government and the federal government over the operations of the state and federal water projects, and litigation on both sides. And the effect of that is that the negotiations really stalled out. We did see a reinitiation of those negotiations this January. Again, we've had another hurdle with the drought. So those are certainly, this has been an up and down thing, to be sure. Not to say that the governor has at all stepped away from his interest in it, but he's certainly being diverted by other things that are going on as well. And so really, BOSCA is actively continuing our direct efforts. And those efforts are really specific, and that is to support having the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement analyzed by the state board as an alternative to the adopted plan. You'll note I'm not supporting the voluntary agreement in and of itself, right? I'm not a scientist. I'm not a biologist. I'm relying upon San Francisco's biologists to say that this is a worthwhile plan that meets the objectives of the state board's plan. But having that analyzed by the state board seems a very prudent alternative given the significance of the impacts that we are dealing with this plan. And really, in the absence of settlements, unproductive litigation, in which we're also engaged in at this time, will continue and prolong the situation and really won't help the environment or the impacted communities. Just to give you a sense of the timeline that we're working on, things in the water world can move very slow for some time and then they suddenly speed up. And that's just the way things go. So he kind of mentioned that this process started in 2009 when the state board initiated its update, but that they did not actually adopt it until 2019. There was a draft version in between that obviously had to get pulled back and came back out. Since that time, there's been a lot of lawsuits filed, interventions filed, but also these ongoing negotiations that BOSCA is engaged in. At the same time, and you heard from Mr. Ameri, the BOSCA agencies are in the process of updating their urban water management plans as required by the state. And now, and those urban water management plans have to be prepared every 5 years. And they support really as a water supplier, your long-term resource planning to ensure that you have adequate water supplies to meet your existing and future water needs. And certainly your plan is informed by the information you get from San Francisco about the reliability of that supply that you rely upon, just like the other BOSCA agencies. Given that the state board plan was adopted, the reliability information that you got from San Francisco is now reflected in that information. The Bay Delta plan is reflected in that reliability analysis. And so that information was provided to us. We shared it with your agencies, with your agency, and it shows the significance of this rationing and rationing up to 50% during multiple dry years. And to date, all of the BOSCA agencies, have been moving forward using that analysis from the PUC. And that is consistent with what I would expect. So just to kind of close and give you a sense for how do we bring all this together and what are we doing to ensure and secure water supply reliability given these identified Bay Delta plan impacts? There's kind of three groupings. The first, obviously, BOSCA is actively engaged, regularly reporting to the BOSCA board and the member agencies about this effort, the developments of it, the impacts of it, public efforts in front of the state board to file comments on environmental documents, intervening in litigation, kind of all the standard necessary things a public agency does to protect its interests. After the state board adopted the plan, BOSCA, I actively approached the PUC publicly in their commission meetings. And I have been reminding them regularly of their contractual and legal water supply obligations to the BOSCA member agencies. And I successfully urged the PUC to initiate their new alternative water supply planning program. And that's the program that they've started to develop new sources of water to meet these obligations in the event that the Bay Delta plan gets implemented, and then we all have to deal with these impacts. We supported the $288 million allocation in San Francisco's 10-year CIP for the planning necessary, and that is also regularly reported on. That information can be available on their website. It's also reported to the BOSCA board. And then lastly, BOSCA is actively engaged in advocacy efforts on behalf of the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement. Again, this point of supporting the governor's leadership on voluntary agreements and getting the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement analyzed by the state board as an alternative to the adopted Bay Delta plan. And through that effort, I'm engaging with state and local elected officials, water customers, businesses, basically, across the service area, really focusing on this message of this alternative and having it evaluated by the state board. And with that, that concludes my remarks.
Okay, thank you. And this is a work session, so I'm going to, rather than have council questions right now, we're going to go to public comments on this issue. And I do see that so you all recall that our former council member, Al Mendel, was the council's representative to BOSCA and actually is able, we determined that he was able to continue in that capacity, even though he is no longer a member of the city council. So he is our representative to that, to BOSCA. And I see that his hand is up, so I am going to invite him to address us. So yes, Ms. Lenz, you can bring council former Mendel in. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I am here, available for any questions if you have any. But obviously, Ms. St. Cool is leading the presentation. She did a great job. She is, our representative in effect, and among the other 25 member agencies, and fighting for us. And so I hope that we listen to her and remember that she's on our side, trying to protect our water users and our ability, Hayward's ability to provide water to them, residences and businesses alike. So with that, I'm going to stay. And if there are questions, I'm happy to chime in.
Yes, I think that I have one, that I would like to ask you. And I think Ms. Sandolka had some comments relevant to this when she was talking about the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement. But I think one of the concerns all along, and as you know, I've been briefed on this before, and I know former council member Mendel, that you are a great champion of the environment, as I think all of us actually up here try to be. So I just would be interested in any comments you have on what appears to be an even better, based on the presentation that was just made to us. And thank you for that, because I think I understand it even better than I ever have before. Just comment on what the real trade-off here is regarding, the environmental concerns that I think we all have for the fish and the health of the the habitat and ecosystem especially up there in the mountains. So do you have anything you'd like to share on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to, and I appreciate you recognizing my environmental credentials. So yes, I think that this is a balance, right? And BOSCA's position is not that we should ignore the fish and not try to restore their habitat. BOSCA's position, my position, and I think historically Hayward's position has been that, yes, we want to try and do as much as we can to restore the fish habitats and the natural state of the river, but we also need to be looking out for the Hayward residents in BOSCA's 2.6, BOSCA and SFPUC's 2.6 million residents and their water needs. And there's a balance to be struck there, right? We can't give it all to the fish. We can't give it all to
Okay.
people. We have to find the balance. And the voluntary agreements that Ms. Sankula referenced, which we are asking the state board to seriously consider and to look at the science, that is the only attempt out there, I think, in my opinion, to really strike that balance and to acknowledge that, yes, we need to do as much as we can for the fish, especially during the times of the year when they need it the most, and especially by providing habitat and in-stream measures, non-flow measures. But we also need to keep providing water to the millions of people in the Bay Area. To me personally, a 50% reduction is completely untenable. We all remember, as Ms. Sankula pointed out, what it was like a few years ago when we had to do 20 to 30% reductions. And Hayward really stepped up. But I remember, buckets in the shower and using it to water flowers in the yard and things like that. And that, imagine doing double that. Imagine doing double that and asking our businesses to do the same. So, some of them might have to close, the bottling companies, for example, if they don't have adequate supply to water. So to me, it's about the balance. I'm proud of the fact that that's what BOSCA is fighting for, a balance that protects the fish and protects the water users. And we're just asking the state board to do the same thing and to look at the science that has been provided by San Francisco and analyze it. And if they don't like it, then fine, provide some science-based feedback and we'll come up with the best solution we can that strikes that balance.
Okay, thank you. And yes, thank you for hanging around in case we have any more questions for you. But I'm seeing that we do have another request to speak from the public. That would be Marty Funkhauser. Yes.
Hello. I really appreciated the presentation from BOSCA. I think water conservation is key to sustainability moving forward. I would like to bring attention. Recently, I've been going around fishing. There are three-eyed fish in the water. We got to take care of it. The pollution, with three eyes, they need more energy, more water. We really need to protect them. They're not only here in Hayward, they're also in Springfield, down by the nuclear power plant. But I like where we're going. We're moving in the right direction. We need to support this cause for the rest of eternity. I mean, water is not renewable. It is not renewable. It is here. And we got to make the best of it, the most of it. Otherwise, we could see four-eyed fish in the future. We don't need that. It's a scary sight pulling that out of the water. Thank you. I appreciate you letting me speak.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised from the public, so we will, and you're not aware of anyone else, Madam City Clerk. So we will close public comments and I'll go back to council now for questions and comments on this issue. And we'll start with Council Member Zermino.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Nicole, for the presentation. Just one quick question. So BOSCA's position is that we should not have to ration water, right? Is that what I get?
No, actually, we currently, San Francisco has a policy of allowing for rationing and planning for rationing up to 20% throughout the regional water system. So that's been our policy since 2007. Our concern is about rationing levels above 20%, and in particular at rationing levels of 40 to 50%, given the potential impacts that has on the water customers.
And that's what the plan is proposing. Okay. I do like the idea of further studies to ensure that we come up with some kind of a plan where both humans and fauna are able to survive with what we have, because the droughts will continue. So it may not have to be done this year, but pretty soon we have to ration some more. So I do like that further study being done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Salinas.
Yeah, will there be, and I guess Nicole can answer this, will there be, at the end of all of this, studies and, well, actually, let me back up. Let me ask another question before I ask this question. Will there be some kind of like a meta-analysis on, I see there's 200 studies that have been done, in the last, over 10 years. Is there a meta-analysis that has been done? And then my second question is, are there a menu of policies that participating municipal governments can look at and then evaluate and then proceed with? What are your thoughts around that?
So let's start with the analysis. My expectation is that I'm going to assume it's going to happen. So when the state board says it will review the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement, there's going to be two steps to that. The first one will be, I believe, an independent third-party group of experts, peer review type of thing that will review the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement and all of this information that we bring to bear as well. So all this technical information to analyze it and confirm that it, meets the objectives of the Bay Delta Plan, the biological objectives of the Bay Delta Plan, because that is question number one, right? If it doesn't meet that, then we need to modify it. So it has to at least meet the biological objectives. That process will get completed. Assuming it confirms that it meets the biological objectives, then it'll go back to the state board and they will actually do an environmental review on that and do a full EIS, or it's a substitute environmental document. And then that will also be presented publicly to go through the process. That's how I expect the biological and environmental evaluation of the voluntary agreement to go forward. I think your question about policies, it seems like that might speak more to water use or demand management within the service area. That is a question that we are actually going to be tackling again, and Bosca has done this a few times since I've been there in 2002, as part of our long-term planning look at conservation, demand management, and alternative water supplies. For example, in 2007, Bosca worked to put out city ordinances, updated ordinances for all the cities to consider about new landscaping efficiency. You guys were working with, it was the Flows to the Bay group. I can't remember who that was, and looking at indoor efficiency standards. At the time, that was kind of the leading edge about what we were trying to look at for ordinances. Today, the question is, what should our ordinances be around gray water use, right? And required gray water use in construction, new and existing construction, or even things like, should there be an ordinance that says new buildings have to come in and not require any more water than what's already being used on site, type of thing. So that is going to be something that as Bosca and with our member agencies, including Hayward, I anticipate we'll be looking over the next year and a half as part of our long-term planning work.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And, let me tell you, fishing season started, a couple of months ago, and my, friend of mine and I, we're out there once a week. We take Stockton 4 East and, along the 120 and along the 4, and we go all the way out as far as, Calaveras, and Tuolumne. I mean, those are the counties that we're in. And it is absolutely incredible that we're fishing in these reservoirs and we're walking down 50, 60 feet down into the reservoir, and we're fishing off, literally fishing off the floor of the reservoir. And then of course the drop, you reach out, 10 feet and then it drops, and so we're literally fishing from the floor of the reservoir. And so some parts of the reservoirs that we've been out, are, you can just see, the rings around the reservoir on how heavily impacted they are. So anyways, Well, good work. Appreciate it. And I'll look forward to, what comes down the pike, literally what comes down the pike. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for mentioning the review of landscaping, drought-resistant landscaping. I was actually going to ask about that, if that was something that you all were going to look at. And I'm also wondering if in these studies, would there be a comparison of how much water usage is done by companies versus residents, and what is the more impactful way to address water usage? I'm just curious to see, asking residents to reduce to 50% is a big deal. And I do agree with Councilmember Zamorano that I think we are going to eventually get to that, unfortunately. But I'm also curious to see, is it going to be like recycling when you find out, we've been separating trash, we've been doing all these things, and then we find out, 25 years later, 20 years later, they're actually not recycling, and, we're putting an unfair burden on our residents. Recycling is very important. I just want to make sure that everyone is playing their part in reducing water usage as well as recycling and these things that are trying to make our planet more green. So I'm just curious if the studies will be reflecting that as well.
Yeah, so one of the things that BOSCA does, and we have records going back to the mid-'80s, we put out a report every year about water use on the individual basis for each of the member agencies, and then collectively as the region. And those reports show, how much residential water use, what is the non-residential water use, what is the what is now called non-revenue water, right, which is basically like either leaks or fire flows, things like that. Also information about customers, a number of customers, per capita information. And we use this information to do what is then also our demand projections with each of your agencies looking to the future to say, okay, incorporating all this data, and the more data we have, the better, we then use projections based on adopted land use plans to say, what does that mean moving forward? And then how do we look at applying conservation programs and demand management to that? And then when we do that, we publish a regional demand study. And we just completed that in June 2020 before these urban water management plans. So kind of to support everybody's urban water management plans. Those annual surveys and that demand study are actually on our website at bosca.org. And I think they're very helpful for everybody to understand. One thing we know, though, is that, and we're learning, is that our traditional demand projection process, I think rightfully, but I think we've got to deal with it, hasn't historically tried to say, well, in our 20-year planning horizon that we're looking at, we're going to assume one or two droughts or some kind of economic impact issue, right? But unfortunately, we're getting these things, and they have a long-term impact on demand. So one of the things the BOSCA board has funded this year is looking at a sensitivity analysis to our demand to say, okay, in the last 10 years, we've had two droughts now, a major recession, and a pandemic. If we start looking forward, what kind of impacts, or does that change how we're dealing with things? Does it change what our numbers are and where might our investments be, or what are the impacts of these droughts? So that's where, we try to look at everything at the individual agencies and then roll them up as a region so that our planning is better informed. And that's one of the big things that we do. Is that helpful?
I didn't really hear if it's split by resident by county, but it sounds like it's by region.
Everything is split. No, everything is split by individual agencies.
Okay.
So by the 26 member agencies, and within the agencies by their different customer classes.
Got it. Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Councilmember Lamnon.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. It was really helpful. Thank you. And following up on Councilmember Andrews' question, so in that analysis, and I apologize if you just said this and I missed it, is there also a sense of where the conservation rates are. As former Councilmember Mendel said, Hayward has historically done a really good job of conserving. And so is that evaluated in any of this work? You know, how does that play in?
Yeah, so one of the ways you see that is kind of in a per capita use, right? And kind of saying how much is the residential per capita use. So we report on that every year. And we say this is the resulting per capita. We also have an annual conservation report that shows participation by our member agencies in our conservation programs. So between the two, you kind of get a snapshot of what's going on today. But also the other thing that's happening is that from the drought that we had in 2016, the state is also imposing statewide efficiency guidelines on residential customers and on landscape use, efficiency guidelines. Those are not finalized yet, but everyone will be held to those, and those are going to come into fruition in the next year or so. So we are all going to get to that level of efficiency and need to implement programs to achieve that. So, you know, we do see differences amongst the Bosque region, but, you know, we're moving in a direction in which we're all going to have to achieve those efficiency standards. So that's part of the future planning part.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And today, are you looking for direction or action for the city to take? This is to you or city staff.
This is, yeah, I mean, not from my perspective. You know, I've been engaged actively with the mayor on this. She's been a strong part of our discussions about the regional interests in having the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement analyzed by the state. But I will defer to see if staff had something else they were anticipating.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Lamnin, this is an informational report and there is no action required.
Okay,
thank you.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. Just didn't want to miss a question if there was one. So, but I will say that I do support the action. Thank you to the mayor and city staff and to our Bosque rep, former Councilmember Mendel, for representing our interests well. I think I concur with my colleagues and with the direction that you outlined in the presentation about really having decisions be science-based and continuing to push for that analysis. And I know in that work is keeping in mind what the impact eventually will be on the ratepayers, but it sounds like that's more on the use side, and this is really on the science-based evaluation side. So I am supportive of the work. And, you know, if we need to be calling in somewhere or something like that, do let us know. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do that. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I think, you know, I have been involved in some discussions, you know, and of course, you know, as our representative former council member Mendel has been as well. But, you know, I really felt like the whole council needed to have a better understanding of this, because when I started, I didn't have a very good understanding of it. So thank you. And let's see, and we may need that, you know, advocacy at some point. Okay, Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Nicole, for being here. Thank you, former Councilmember Al Mendel. That's a mouthful. I wholeheartedly support the approach on examining the volunteer plan. What is the next step in that plan? Has that plan already been presented to the state board, or are we still requesting for it to be taken into consideration? What are the next steps in this process?
Right at the moment, we are still working with the governor's negotiators. They would really prefer to have what they call a global voluntary agreement that incorporates all of the rivers that flow into the Bay Delta and impacts both the state and the federal projects. So they've asked us to hold off sending our alternative to the state board just as yet, with the hope that there'd be a whole package. It's a question about when do we decide we cannot wait any longer. And that is a question that I've actually have a call with Secretary Crowfoot on Thursday to get a sense for where he's at, because I want his support if we decide to do that, right? And so we're in discussions on that, but I think the pressure is mounting because, like Hayward, all of the BOSCA agencies are taking these actions publicly on your urban water management plans, identifying these significant cutbacks, right? So the conversation locally is building, and that's an important message also for Mr. Crowfoot to hear. So I don't have a great answer for you, but that's where we're pressing, is to get our alternative to the state board with the state's support, with the governor's negotiators' support.
And how often does BOSCA meet to give updates to our representative on this issue? Are those monthly meetings, quarterly meetings?
Yeah, so I meet monthly with your staff. So we meet at the staff level. And then the BOSCA board meets, the main board, the whole board meets every other month. So they meet on the odd months, so in July. And then there's one committee that meets on the alternate month.
Okay. So this clearly it's a priority. It's being closely tracked. And thank you, Mayor, for weighing in on the issue, and would just encourage any letters of support, advocacy, calls, whatever we need to do to move this along. I really appreciate connecting the dots and seeing how directly this is going to impact our community, and then also wanting to know on a staff level if there's more ways we could improve, encouraging bay-friendly landscaping. I know at one point we did rebates to encourage people to get rid of their lawns. That's something I'm willing to do. So if there's ways that we can find avenues to focus on water conservation now and get ahead of it, because hopefully we go with a voluntary plan, but if we don't, it's still something we need to work on as a community collectively. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. So just a question or two. When do you think that we're going to hear back from the governor's project?
So, like I said, I'm in ongoing conversations with his negotiators about this. I don't have a solid answer for you about when he would be willing to move this or not, but I don't expect that the region, you and your 25 other neighbors are going to want to continue to wait on the fence for 6 months or more type of thing, right? So there's an increased discussion about the need to say, hey, look, we need to have this evaluated no matter what. And we can just bring it to the state. We can't because we're not the water rights holder, but San Francisco with the districts could bring it to the state board independent of the governor's action. But the interest is really in trying to keep the governor's support because he has supported these. So that's kind of the difficult situation we're in right now.
Okay. And what's the most aggressive action that was discussed but not necessarily presented?
Meaning what? What the most aggressive action?
To kind of work on kind of our water issue. For example, oftentimes, a collective body will discuss something and usually go with, the most compromising decision amongst this many individuals. But staff may have a more aggressive approach to ensure that, things are met.
Well, I would say that we took a multi-pronged approach. So, and I didn't spend a lot of time talking about it, but we did take the most protective approach, which was intervening in the litigation action against the state board's adoption of the CEQA document. So, and that was a very significant step that the BOSCA board took to protect your interests in any legal proceedings that'll come about, settlement proceedings, most likely from this action. If the voluntary agreement doesn't bear fruit, the legal avenue will. And that certainly is the strongest from a positional political action for this region to take, to not rely upon San Francisco solely to be in that litigation action, but to take it independently and intervene in those, assuming that, we have an independent interest from San Francisco. That said, the board was not comfortable with that. And the interest is in saying, look, we want to really try to negotiate our way through this, and that's the voluntary agreement.
Okay. And then as far as our water usage, do we ship any water to out of state?
No.
Okay. Not at all. Not a single.
No.
Okay.
No.
So one of the concerns I have is primarily, as you know, we've been talking about droughts significantly, and one of the things that I wanted to say is that the average water use is 50% environmental, 40% agricultural, and 10% urban. And primarily, my focus would always be the most bang for your buck, and focusing on those efforts and making sure that agriculture and everything else is actually the main focus, rather than us restricting our showers and things like that don't have a significant impact compared to, when you drive out into the Central Valley and you see the water usage in like midday. Has that been discussed? Where's the prioritization there?
So in the voluntary agreement, the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement, again, this is a voluntary agreement put forth by San Francisco as the urban agency, essentially representing all of us and you, and the two main irrigation districts, Modesto and Turlock irrigation districts. As part of that, those districts have put the idea, and I think it's an excellent one, of together trying to manage their groundwater with their surface supplies differently. Right. So it's about investing in efficiency in the agricultural districts, creating opportunities to store water in the ground for future use, creating a different dynamic about how water is used in their service area in a way that provides us benefit. So that is one of the key pieces that will be tested through the voluntary agreement. And that is a huge stride forward in our relationship with those two districts. And those are really the two agricultural districts that impact our river supplies. Those are the ones that we share the Tuolumne River with. Those types of arrangements have been successful in other parts of the state, but to date, Modesto and Turlock have not been interested in those discussions. This is really the first time they've been willing to put that on the table. And so that's a really important step forward for some much more, as you mentioned, cost-effective opportunities to meet our collective needs, right? I mean, that's the whole, we're sharing this resource, not just with the fish, but with the districts and ourselves. And how do we make that work better?
Okay. And just to be clear, I'm not interested necessarily in the cost effectiveness as much as I am interested in the environmental impacts. That's my priority when I meant bang for my buck. And to our public work director, have any of the cities, including ourselves, talked about desalinization and efforts around that and investment around that to kind of help mitigate, some of the urban usage?
Desalinization is a very energy intensive process. It is extremely costly. The city of Hayward has not looked into that yet. There may be other options that we should consider, and we can consider first before we consider desalinization.
Okay. And I guess I'll leave it at my comments. Yeah. So for the most part, I want the most aggressive, form of action for the environment, and putting that first and foremost. Specifically, I do think it's based on the usage, the percentage of usage is not necessarily in urban areas, but more agricultural and so forth. I'd also like to see what we can do long-term statewide, even regionally, in regards to investments in providing potentially other sources of getting water. So if that means desalinization or something else, maybe that's something that we should consider. So that's kind of where I'm at. And to Councilmember Mendel, I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about this offline as well.
I'm sure he'd be glad to do that. And yeah, it's a complex subject. Councilmember Andrews, did you have another comment or question?
Yeah, I just had one thing to say. Once you all review your landscaping, your drought resistant landscaping, I would love for you all to come to Keep Hayward Clean and Green meeting and see how we can partner in messaging that information out to the community. A few years ago, we did do a beautiful yard contest, which I'm trying to bring back with partnering with Keep Hayward Clean and Green plug. If you all are watching, so it would be great if we can incorporate some of those measures as part of that contest. We did have it before, but it would be nice to get the latest and greatest information on how to do that.
And it would be a bay-friendly landscaping, beautiful yard contest, right?
Certified by Bosca.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Nicole, for bringing this all to just a couple of things. You know, it has occurred to me, especially since I also serve on the Association of Bay Area Governments Board of Directors and am constantly in discussion there about the housing needs in the area. And the state on the one hand is telling us that they may cut way back in our water supply. And yet they are also, hammering us to increase those numbers of housing units being built. And I know that, we have implemented water conservation standards into our building requirements. And so, newer homes that are being built probably are going to use less water as a rule, and nevertheless, they're going to use water. New inhabitants, they're going to use water. And so do you have any thoughts about the potential impact on our ability to actually add housing in this region? Hayward and the peninsula area that we share this, that we share our Bosqua supply with, are two regions where, Hayward has not been really pounded on to build more housing. I think we have done reasonably well compared to other areas, but certainly the peninsula is really being pounded. And I think even for us, our arena numbers are out there, asking us to build a whole lot more. Are we going to be able to do that? And, are these like two state mandates that are, competing with each other here?
The short answer is yes. I think they are two state mandates that at least right at this very moment, in time, as you as cities are having to deal with it. There's no doubt about that. So you're experiencing this like collision of competing state mandates. Bosq is doing a couple things. As we speak, we're reviewing the EIR for Plan Bay Area 2050. And we will be providing comments on that EIR, identifying this critical water supply issue and the fact that the EIR, addressing whether the EIR adequately analyzes this environmental and this water supply impact that you guys are all experiencing and what that means for the proposed plan. So and we'll be coordinating our review and sharing our comments with your public works staff. So that is ongoing. Separately from that, I think each of you as communities, as you adopt these urban water management plans with these potential cutbacks, you're going to have to, obviously consider that when you consider what your growth is and consider approval of development. That's going to be on a case-by-case basis. There's no pat answer for how everybody's going to deal with that. I think, unfortunately, that's something we're going to have to make our way through as we go through the next 5 years. The city of San Francisco has continued to approve development, but they've taken certain steps as they recognize the impacts of the Bay Delta Plan and continue to approve it. Different jurisdictions, I think, are going to feel differently. I just don't have a singular answer for that. But from the regional perspective, it's certainly important for me to elevate that question of that issue, both to ABAG. I'm also elevating that discussion when I speak to our state legislators as well about this issue.
Okay, so I think all of us can, also do what we can to speak to, especially our state legislators about this issue. I just feel that, we needed to have a little bit better understanding. Having this discussion right when we are also really, it does seem that we're on the, the front end now again of what could become a very serious drought. I'm doing that bucket in the shower again myself and watering the plants with it. I see Councilmember Lambden raising her hand there too. So it's an issue that should concern us all. I wanted the council to have a better understanding of it. I think this has happened. I really appreciate your time tonight, Ms. Sendelka, and also former Councilmember Mendel for being here as well, and continuing to represent us. And this probably won't be the last discussion we have, but it's a good start. And I thank you all for your attention and your great questions. And I think we can probably now move on to our next item, but thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor Halliday and council members.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks. And with that, we will now move on to item number 11. And item number 11 is regarding the Stratford Village Proposition 218 hearing that we are conducting this evening, which will also then result in receiving and tabulating property owner ballots. We have received them. They will be tabulated following the public hearing by our city clerk. We went through this a few weeks ago, remember, in a different neighborhood, but for a different reason. But then we will be adopting a resolution establishing the Stratford Village Flood Control Facilities Improvement Assessment District, approving the final engineer's report, ordering the levy and collection of assessments for fiscal year 22, and appropriating the budget. And we will be doing that perhaps in different ways, depending on how the vote comes out. So I will go ahead and ask and I believe it's Maintenance Services Director Ruhlman that is going to lead off from the staff on this topic.
I will. That was a lot of introduction there, so thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I would actually like to turn it over to our management analyst and project manager for our lighting and landscape districts, Denise Blom, who will lead the presentation tonight. So with that, Denise.
All right. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, Madam City Manager. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Very nice. Well, this evening I will be presenting actually 3 public hearing reports. So the first one, Madam Mayor, was the first one that you discussed, and that's going to be the Proposition 218. So tonight we are here. This is our 3rd council meeting. We came to the council on March 23rd with a work session item. We followed with a formal start to the Proposition 218 process on May 4th. We mailed all of the property owners notices and ballots the day after, and they've had over 45 days to return those ballots to us, or actually to the Madam City Clerk. And tonight we're here to get the results. So we're excited. This Proposition 218 election was held to increase annual assessments to fund capital infrastructure improvements. So during our staff's efforts over many months, we conducted many community outreach efforts to both inform and receive input from all of the property owners, of which there were 174. So we mailed notices and ballots to each of them, as I mentioned, on May 5th. It gave them over the 45 days required by law to return those ballots to the Madam City Clerk. And tonight, we're going to pause this item to give the Madam City Clerk an opportunity to count the ballots for us. So she has not opened them. They've all been mailed and collected, and tonight they will be opened and the results given to the City Council. So this item, so what does it mean? So there were up to 174 property owners were given a ballot. Tonight, however many ballots are returned, up to a 50% majority plus 1 needs to determine the outcome. So what does the outcome mean? So if we have a magic number of 35 of yes votes, it means that the property owners agree that they're going to increase their annual assessment to $498 to fund the capital improvements they need. And they'll do that by actually accepting a temporary transfer of funds of $379,000 from the city's stormwater fund to pay for those needed capital improvements. If the 35 or more of the ballots are no, that means that we will come back to the council in July and that the property owners have voted to keep their original assessment of $244 per year, and they have voted not to pay for or fund their capital improvements. So with that, I would like to ask request that the public hearing be opened, and that would include any comments from the public and public input. And following public input, we're going to close the public hearing and then direct the city clerk to tabulate the ballots. So that might take a little bit of time. And so while she's counting those ballots, I will continue to present the second and the third public hearing items. Madam Mayor?
Okay, thank you. That was all very well stated, except first I'm going to ask council if they have any questions at this point before we open the public hearing. So I'm looking right now and not seeing that there are, I'm not missing anything, right? I'm not seeing that there are any hands raised with questions. So so now we will go ahead and open the public hearing on this item. And so the public hearing is now open, and I'm looking at attendees to see if there's anyone wishing to speak. Madam City Clerk, are you aware of anyone wishing to speak on this item?
I'm not aware, Mayor Holliday.
All right, so if no one wishes to speak on this item during the public hearing, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And we will now turn this matter over to the city clerk to count the ballots, while I assume someone else in your office will be acting as our interim city clerk while you're doing that, in case we need to call upon you for other, other reasons. But with that, we will now move on to the next. Turn this over to the city clerk to count the ballots, and we will move on with our agenda and check in with her. I guess between items to see if she is. Has completed the count and is ready to come back on this item. So this item is now temporarily in suspension while the ballots are counted, and we're going to go ahead and move on to item number 12. And I guess, either Maintenance Services Director Ruhlman or Ms. Baum are going to now give us the staff report on item number 12, which is an assessment hearing on the basically our this is for our consolidated landscaping and lighting assessment districts and zones 1 through 18 for the coming fiscal year. So, Ms. Baum, are you going to go ahead and give us this?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. So my second public hearing item is an annual report required by law of the 18 zones of the Landscape and Lighting Assessment District. So each district is a little bit different. They include different things: parks, public trees, and medians. Here's just a few of our 18 lighting and landscape districts. They're located all throughout the city. And we've added quite a few in just the last 4 years. So these lighting and landscape districts are financial mechanisms to pay for or fund benefits in certain neighborhoods. So we actually have almost 4,200 property owners that pay into these assessment districts. So each year, we calculate the budget and the required assessment rate. So the assessment rate that we charge can be no more than the maximum base assessment. The maximum base assessment is set when the zone was originally formed. And in the early years, when they were formed in the 1990s, some of them, 5 of them, did not include an annual inflation factor. But since then, we've always included an annual inflation factor. And as you can see throughout the years and through management of the zones, we're not always charging the maximum rate. For example, if I pick Zone 13, Cannery Place, we could charge a maximum, if needed, $1,282. However, at this time, we only need $361 to pay for the budget, the cash flow, and actually to have a capital reserve to pay for the replacement of capital items in the future. So the next step for this item, Landscape and Lighting Assessment District, Zones 1 through 18. Of course, we're holding the public hearing right now. And we would take public comment on this item. And then if so warranted, we recommend that council adopts 2 resolutions. And those resolutions are the annual approval of the engineer's report, which has all the details for each and every zone. It would be appropriating the 2022 budget, revenue and expenditure, and leveling, I can't say the word, oh my gosh. Levying assessment for this year. And with that, Madam Mayor, that concludes my presentation for the Landscape and Lighting Assessment District.
All right, thank you so much. A great report, with the exception of your not being able to pronounce it. But still, very, very good report. And so now, prior to opening the public hearing, I'm going to ask council if anyone has any questions. And Denise, can you take the that's helpful. Okay, there we go. Yeah, and I'm not seeing that we have any hands raised from the council. So now I will open the public hearing on this item and ask if there are any members of the public with us that would like to speak to the item. And I'm actually not seeing that there are any hands raised, and I'll check with whoever our interim city clerk is at the moment to make sure I'm not missing anything.
Good evening, Mayor. We have no request to speak at this time.
All right, thank you. And so I will close the public hearing and entertain council comments and hopefully a motion. And let's see. No one wishes to speak at the moment? Great. Thank you, Councilmember Lamnon.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move the item.
Second.
Okay, move the item, the recommendation of the staff to approve the engineer's report, 2022 engineer's report, appropriate the fiscal year 2022 budget, and levy the 2022 assessments. Was made by Councilmember Lamnon and seconded by Councilmember Zermano, I believe I heard, right? Yes. Okay. So with that, there are no council comments. I'll ask our Ms. Monlux, our interim city clerk, to call the roll for the vote.
Councilmember Andrews?
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnon?
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas?
Aye.
Councilmember Wahab?
Yes.
Councilmember Zermano?
Aye.
Mayor Halliday?
Yes. Great, making great progress here through the agenda. We now move on to, just announce the motion does pass with 7 aye votes, correct? And thank you all. And we will move on to item number 13, which is regarding the Maintenance District 2, which is also known as the Eden Shores Water Buffer. Again, I will go to probably Ms. Blum, correct?
Yes, Madam Mayor. So good evening. This is my 3rd public hearing report, and this is regarding Maintenance District number 2 on Eden Shores. So they have a lovely water buffer out there that protects the wild animals from coming into the residential area and the residential animals from going out into the wild area. There's lots of birds that come and nest in the reeds there. And we have a lovely vegetation management program, which includes annually we hire about 6,000 goats, and they do a wonderful job in munching down those weeds. So for this item, the district is about 20 years old. And so we do have some capital items and projects we're going to be working on this year. So that water buffer, we have pumps and pumps that pump that water around so it doesn't get stagnant. So those need some repair and replacement. And that fence on the far side, sometimes it sits in salt water. So a lot of the fence line needs to have some repairs and replacement. So we did increase this annual assessment slightly. And at the same time, we are using some of the fund balance to pay for these needed repairs. So it's kind of a combination effort of using fund balance and a slight increase. So that concludes my report for Maintenance District number 2.
Okay, thank you. And so same, are there any council questions at the moment? Seeing, yes, Councilmember Andrews.
I was just curious if the goats were still there.
Oh, no, they usually spend about 5 days there, and we usually hire them about May. So they've already done their job for this year. And so they do an awesome job. It's kind of fun to go out and watch them. They're very cute, as well as efficient.
Thank you.
They're in Oakland now.
They're what?
They're in Oakland.
Oh, eating grass up there?
Yep.
Let me ask about the water buffer. I've always been so interested in that. I was part of, approving the Eden Shores development. I can't remember whether it was on the Planning Commission or as a member of council, but I just remember I've always been fascinated by that feature, which was, there was a lot of discussion about that development and whether it should have been built since it is out there in sensitive, wetland areas and habitat. And the water buffer was created to protect the natural inhabitants of the wetlands, like the salt marsh harvest mouse, from domestic pets that might get out there. And so I just want to ask if we have any assessment of how well that water, the moat, as I like to refer to it, is working for the purpose it was created.
I would say, so it's been working really well, and it's actually a double line of defense. So not only is there the water moat, and I'm not really sure, maybe it's 20 feet across, but on the other side of that, there's probably about 10 to 20 feet of dirt, but then we have a perimeter fence. So it's kind of like a double line of defense. And so as far as we know, it's working great.
And that we're not losing a lot of the natural animals out there. Okay, great. Thank you. Are there any other council questions right now? If not, and not seeing any, I will open the public hearing on this matter and ask if there is anyone attending the meeting from the public who would like to speak on this item.
We have no request to speak, Mayor.
No, okay, no request to speak. So I'm going to close the public hearing and entertain comments and a motion or a motion from council. Who would like to do that?
I'll move the item, Mayor.
I'll second, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So staff recommendation to approve the engineer's report, appropriate the fiscal year 2022 budget, and levy the 2022 assessments. It's easier if you say levy than levying, but anyway, that motion has been made by Councilmember Wahab, seconded by Councilmember Marquez. So Ms. Munlux, can you go ahead and conduct the roll call vote?
Councilmember Andrews?
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnon?
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas?
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarmino?
Aye.
Mayor Halliday?
Yes, and the motion passes with 7 aye votes. So, Ms. Blum, I think that probably completes your items this evening, you and Mr. Rollman. But I think we should do a little check-in with our city clerk to see if, actually that doesn't complete because we're going to be going back to item 11, I guess. But so can we, do we have any word from the city clerk about how the count is coming or whether it's done?
I will check in with her, Mayor.
Okay.
We can always move on to the next item. If
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and do that and we'll come back then since she probably would have let you know if she was ready. So we will now move on to item number 14, which is the temporary eviction moratorium, or it's regarding our temporary eviction moratorium that we have in place and its adoption of an emergency ordinance. Well, I think this is actually extending the moratorium on residential evictions. And we will hear first from Assistant City Manager Ott, I believe.
I will start. I think Christina Morales, our housing manager, will be doing this presentation, but it is actually, just to clarify, it is a new moratorium because the state superseded our previous one. And so we had to let our previous moratorium on residential evictions expire. So now you'll hear from Ms. Morales that we actually think the state will supersede us again, but we wanted to come to you tonight to be ready in the event that they weren't able to act on that. So I'm going to turn it over to Christina now and she'll walk through the slides.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council and members of the community. I'm Christina Morales. I'm the Housing Division Manager. And the item before you is a temporary moratorium on residential and residential and commercial evictions related to COVID-19 and enacting an extension through September 30th, 2020 in the event that the state does not extend their moratorium. To give you an overview of the current eviction protections, there is a statewide moratorium in place on residential evictions that protects tenants from eviction due to non-payment of rent. And the city has a commercial moratorium. Both of those conclude at the end of this month on June 30th, 2021. The city of Hayward could not extend its residential eviction moratorium when it concluded in September 30th, 2020, because the state preempted the city's ability to extend our legislation. It is anticipated that this will happen again. We know that the state is working on legislation to extend their moratorium and to increase tenant protections, provide additional financial assistance to both tenants and landlords to recover the lost revenue. But in the event that the state is not able to reach an agreement in time for the deadline, we think it's prudent to have an eviction moratorium in place, even if it's a matter of just covering the time period between the time that the state's legislation expires and any gap until they enact a new legislation. If the state does not extend their eviction protection, it leaves the Hayward residents at risk if they're unable to pay their July 1st rent. But as I mentioned, we're expecting that the state preempts our ability to enact a moratorium if they do take action as anticipated. Another factor in consideration is the disbursement of rental assistance has been slow through Alameda County, and I'll just provide a little more detail on what that is. So the Alameda County administers the federal COVID-19 rental assistance program, and they have about $48 million in assistance that they have available to provide to community members who have been unable to pay their rent due to COVID-19. They implemented their program quickly to align it with the state's plan to implement as to avoid confusion about one program being available and another one not being available. So they stood it up quickly, but had very small staff in order to disperse the funds. So the program was implemented in phases with the initial organization that was going to disperse the fund, but without having a lot of the other pieces in place, like different other entities that would help process the applications. They currently have about 3,900 applications that they've received, and they have dispersed about $5 million in funds. The process in verifying eligibility and receiving all the documentations from the applicants is labor intensive, so it is taking a while to get through those applications. But they have disclosed that they are working on a process to procure more staff in order to expedite the process. So additional time is needed in order to protect tenants that have been unable to pay their rent due to COVID-19. So in considering the eviction moratoria, it's important to note that the state moratoria on evictions and the Hayward's temporary moratorium on commercial evictions are going to sunset at the end of this month. The state has only recently reopened, so there's still financial instability. Disbursements, I mentioned before, the disbursements of rental assistance has been slow to community members. So having that protection in place of getting the financial aid needed to be current on their rent is critical to make sure that people avoid eviction. And extending the commercial moratorium will unlikely change the outcome for commercial tenants and may hinder attraction of new businesses and recovery. So that said, the staff is recommending an adoption of a temporary moratorium on residential evictions from July 1st, when the state moratorium sunsets, through September 30th, 2020. This is only in the event that the state does not extend their moratorium on evictions. Staff also does not recommend extending the commercial moratorium because we feel we have evaluated the issue and feel that there has been opportunity for recovery and there's no resources in order to pay back rent. And there is a concern about hindering additional businesses for the recovery of the community. If enacted as emergency ordinance, it will require 5 affirmative votes and it will be adopted and effective immediately. If the item does not receives only 4 votes or less, or 4 votes, it would be adopted at the next council meeting and effective 30 days later. So in essence, it would still, if the state does not enact their moratorium or extend their moratorium before the end of the month, 4 affirmative votes may still leave Hayward residents in jeopardy as the state is trying to finalize their legislation. So if approved, we will the Housing Division will continue to work with tenants and landlords and inform them about their rights and responsibilities under the ordinance and approved state legislation. This concludes my presentation and I'm available for questions.
And let me start by just asking you if you have any late information. I know I read something about the state action in this morning in the paper. Do you have any late information on any action there, or when can we expect to know that?
They will, in order to approve something in time, they will need to print the legislation sometime this week. So we will get additional information shortly. And then I believe it has to be voted on before the legislation sunsets.
Okay. All right. So we do have some council questions. Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you, Mayor. Specifically in regards to the state action, you're talking about a moratorium. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But included in the moratorium is the rental assistance as well and modifications to the rental assistance program.
Okay, modification, or, some reports have stated that it would potentially wipe out any past due rents. Completely.
So the proposal that they're discussing right now would change the terms of the rental assistance, basically extending it to 100% of the past due rent, where currently it only provides 80%, and it's anticipated that the landlord forgive 20% of the rent. So if the new legislation is passed, it is to that extent 100% pay off the rent debt of the tenant. For those that are income qualify as low income.
Okay, and the rough timeline, you believe it to be how long?
I am hopeful that the state will enact this before their existing legislation expires. But as an added protection, we just want to have something in place in case it takes weeks or days or weeks after the termination of the moratorium to be able to make a final agreement, because it will require a 2/3 vote.
Okay. And, I know we're focusing mostly on the residential piece, but what is the justification around the commercial?
I'm going to go ahead and jump in here on this item. I think we have looked at this carefully, and I think because the reopening of businesses has occurred kind of slowly through the different tiers, we're also getting a lot of interest from entrepreneurs wanting to open businesses. We haven't heard a lot from businesses or landlords in support of continuing this. And I think what we're actually concerned about, given the low vacancy rates in the city, is that we're actually, if we don't remove the moratorium, that we could actually be hindering recovery, and that there wouldn't be, we think there's potential for businesses to take over vacant spaces. And so I think we don't think that there's much benefit in extending it, and potentially some actual detriments to keeping it and discouraging new businesses from moving in and opening businesses in the city.
Okay. And then the residential is extended only for how long, roughly?
Through the end of September.
Okay. Now, with that being said, do we have a simultaneous plan where we ensure that a renter and a landlord can come up? What if the landlord doesn't do the 20%? If the state ends up adopting that, their state policy?
Christina, do you want to talk a little bit about the mediation?
Yeah, so we do have a mediation program that is in place to help tenants and landlord negotiate repayment plans. In terms of for one of the reasons the county is waiting to release some of the funds is they are actually anticipating that the state will modify the terms, the requirements for the state allocation of the federal funds. So it seems highly likely that the program will be modified. The county's anticipating, it's been released in the news. So it's very likely that they will provide the full rental assistance. Other than that, tenants and landlords could participate in the mediation program to address any unpaid rent.
Okay. And apologies again, last question. We've been getting a lot of emails regarding the abuse of the moratorium and so forth. If the back rent is paid, even with the slights that were happening in the last couple of months, is a landlord able to evict somebody because of previous, even though it's paid off now, for previous failure to pay?
If they would be able to evict somebody even though the tenant is current on their rent.
Covered on their rent, right? So let's say September comes by, they're 0-0 in their balance, but because the landlord is potentially upset with the activities of that particular tenant, are they able to remove that tenant?
They would not be able to remove the tenant unless they had followed one of the reasons for eviction under our just cause for eviction ordinance.
Okay, thank you. And do we know how many evictions have happened in the last 12 months in Hayward specifically?
We do not.
Okay, thank you.
There shouldn't have been any, really, if we have had an eviction moratorium in place.
Yeah, the sheriff has released reports that pretty much nothing, but I just wanted to make sure that in the city of Hayward, we had a number, but it doesn't look like we have.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Christina, for your report. I understand that the state is looking at extending the moratorium on residential evictions. Has there been any discussion with respect to the commercial side of it?
So the state doesn't have a moratorium on commercial evictions. They did delegate authority to cities to enact a moratorium on commercial evictions.
Okay. And I understand staff's rationale as to why we're not proceeding with that. With respect to the rent relief funds, so we've expended all the money that Hayward had allocated through the CDBG funding. There's nothing left. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So residents would have to go to the county program.
That's correct.
And the county program, is there a requirement that the tenant has to be cooperative? I heard you mention there's a lot of, sounds like cumbersome paperwork. So is it a requirement that the tenant cooperate with that process?
To meet the first phase priority, there is an income eligibility requirement. So the tenant does have to participate and provide information about their income eligibility.
Okay. And is there any way, since the county has been so slow in dispersing those funds, is there any discussion with allowing like city's fair share of disbursement to try to expedite that process?
No, there isn't. They're already in contract with a service provider to disperse the funds, and they have also started with entering into contract with outreach providers. And then the next phase is to enter into contract with providers that can assist applicants secure all the documentation they need in order to apply and help them understand the requirements. So that's kind of in the upcoming phase. And once they get through that, they should be able to expedite the applications more quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Zermeño. You are on mute, Councilmember Zermeño.
I'm always on mute. So I make all these noises and I want to bug you guys. Anyway, is there a reason why we only go to September 2021? I know the state can come in and preempt, but why did we stop there?
The intent was to get through the next 90 days where we have a council recess and continue to evaluate the need for a moratorium.
Okay.
I think with the all of the emergency protections coming to an end and the state opening up, we're getting very close to the end of it. So we didn't want to implement a moratorium that was longer than necessary.
Okay, I wasn't too. I'm conflicted on the commercial eviction because I know that there are probably a couple of mom and pop business owners. I'm thinking Maria Lopez, for example, right behind Gateway on Leydig and Tennyson, who was kind of iffy, et cetera. She was having a hard time. But I understand your point of view that it may hinder some other possibilities. So I guess I do agree with it. But can we look into approaching some of our small business owners? I'm thinking specifically over on Tennyson Road. I'm thinking Sinaloa Restaurant, Maria's Restaurant. I'm thinking Don Gaspacho. There's a very so some of these shops are really, El Portal over on Mission. They're really small. They're mom and pop. They're family run, and they're different than Metro Taquero. They're different than Pepsi Cola and all these other folks. But I'm hoping that we can do a reach out to them. Can we help out? We don't have it. Maybe we can do something.
Yeah, I just highlight that on Thursday evening at the Council Economic Development Committee, we are bringing forward the recommendations for the variety of stimulus packages for the business community, which is a couple $1 million. And so I know we will make sure that economic development staff hears your comments about particularly some of the smaller businesses in South Hayward. And really does a lot of outreach to those businesses when we hopefully approve those programs with the stimulus dollars.
And they're different. La Victoria. I mean, La Victoria obviously has funds. They're building a brand new restaurant over on Mission. But the 152 businesses on Tennyson Road, they're not large businesses. So I'm also happy that the state is coming through with this, and I'm happy that I certainly hope that they do vote for this. And we got a letter from Mr. Robledo today about.
I want to remind you that we are on questions right now. We have.
Okay. So my question is, do we know if the state has a program where they will help with some kind of a grant to the mom and pop homeowners who rent their homes, which is what Mr. Robert Robledo was hoping that we would do. We don't have the funds, but the state does. Do we know if that's part of the program?
It's not I don't believe it's a part of this current legislation, but I would have to look to see if there's any other program available. I know that there are protections from being foreclosed on if you have small rental properties. So those individuals would be able to apply for forbearance with their lender.
Very good. And whatever we vote on today could be superseded or probably will be superseded by the state. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I thought I had a question, but I can't think of it. So I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on this item. I do think we have a couple of speakers here. So Ms. Monlux, are you still with us here? Yes, thank you. And okay, so we have Lacey Amadei.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Lacey Amadei with the Hayward Collective. I hope you all had the chance to review the comment letter we submitted last night, but I'm just going to...
Lacey, it's hard to hear you. If you could speak up, we could hardly hear you.
Is that better?
Louder, please. It's a little bit better, but...
Okay. Okay, can you hear me now?
That's much clearer.
Yes.
Okay, so I hope you had the chance to review the letter we submitted last night. I'm just going to go over some of the points. First of all, like we already discussed, it's really likely that the state is going to extend theirs and supersede this, but we still thank staff for being proactive in the event that we needed a stopgap protection. So we do support you all voting, hopefully unanimously, to enact staff's recommendation. I do want to just bring up some considerations. The first one is that we're just a little bit wary about the difference between our proposed local moratorium and then the Alameda County moratorium, with some Alameda County moratorium protections being stronger. We hope that the city, when they encounter residents needing assistance, we hope that they continue to direct them to other legal service provider partners so that everyone can understand all of their rights and responsibilities, especially given that there could be confusion with the different moratoriums and different responsibilities between the state and the county. Although we're supporting absolutely the staff recommendation, it would be really great if you tonight could memorialize to provide direction to staff that you will reconsider either close to when this expires or when the state protections expire, should they be renewed, just to look at if September is enough, to consider if we need something like a moratorium on rent increases, and also to take a look at how the applications for rental assistance are being processed. I understand that right now, the county is being slow. The state, we understand that to be slow at this time. Maybe we'll have better data later on. And also we're going to have a different situation with more community partners. But it would definitely be very helpful if the community could know that later on, like, this is not going to be the last pass, even if the state does enact their own programs, that the council will also revisit looking at the numbers that we know about Hayward to consider whatever else we need to do. For example, maybe we need to invest more funding to expand the community partners that are able to focus on education and outreach and with the preparation of the applications. But yeah, thank you to staff, and I hope that you all vote on this unanimously. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay, next we have Robert Robledo. I hope that I said that correct. I'll probably call you Robert, right?
You sure did. Thank you, Mayor Holliday, and good evening, Mayor Holliday and City Council members. Thank you, staff, for your report. My name is Robert Robledo. I am the Executive Director of the Rental Housing Association of Southern Alameda County. We have been in Hayward and made Hayward our home since 1967. I am brand new into this position. I have met with some of you. I am here to say that we are part of this community as well, and you have a partner and a friend at the RHA. We want to work with the City Council. We want to work with the Hayward Collective to come to something where we can all benefit. I think that sometimes we get into our corners and we are so strong on our positions that we forget we're all community. And we need to work with this. We need to work together. The only enemy right now is COVID. That is it. That is what we need to focus on. But we also need to focus on the fact that I have members who are minorities. I'm a renter myself, and I'm a Latino and a gay Latino, and I'm proud of that. But what I want to remind council and others in the community is that when you impose these eviction moratoriums, you are hurting small landlords and owners who maybe own 4 units or less. And most of those are minority owners. And some of them look at this as renting their property as a way to supplement the retirement or to be able to live. And some of my members are considering selling their properties, getting out of the industry completely. What's that going to do to Hayward? What that's going to do is it's going to force people out into the street and create more homeless situation. I don't want to see that happen. I'm also not saying that we shouldn't protect tenant rights, but we need to look at a way on what we could do to help landlords right now. And again, I'm talking about the landlords, the owners that are 4 units or less. Those are the ones we need to focus on. So I just want to thank City Council and the Mayor for your time, and staff for all the work you put into this. And thank you for this opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Thank you for your comments. And next we have Dr. Shonda Goward.
There we go. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you briefly this evening. I got to meet some of you on Saturday, and it was lovely to chat with you. I do want to just bring up 2 things. I'm also a member of the Hayward Collective and want to add a second voice to the things that Lacey mentioned, and also note that each time this comes up, it gets derailed towards landlords. And I really want to focus on tenants at this moment who are still significantly struggling, and also point out that we have 2 colleges in Hayward, and many of those students need this moratorium. If it goes all the way to September as proposed, it will allow them time to receive their financial aid so they can go forward and be able to pay rent. So I just wanted to note that there is a significant student population who's gone through a great deal due to COVID, and increasing the moratorium would also significantly be beneficial to supporting them. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you. So I don't see any other new requests from the public to speak. No. So I'm going to go ahead and close a public hearing on this and go and then entertain any council comments or a motion. Councilmember Salinas.
Thank you. I wanted to, first really acknowledge, staff for their work, and wanted to also acknowledge my fellow committee members on the Housing and Homelessness Task Force, Councilmember Lamnin and Councilmember Wahab. And, when we started, really down this road with moratoriums on evictions, our goal really were to protect tenants. And I know, a lot of folks, particularly in the housing, in the landlord community, we got a lot of pushback for this. And, over the months, I've had a lot of conversations with, a lot of landlords with large properties and small properties, landlords of, large properties, and of course, small mom and pop communities. And they, and I've always been very straightforward with them and very, upfront about why we do this and why it's important. And why it's important to do it at a local level. We've, and I'm also very proud to say that, we've we've also been one of the very first cities along the way in the entire pandemic in the last year and a half to really, to really do this and protect tenants. And then, so I think I think our record speaks for itself, and I know staff has been with us every step of the way. And I wanted to thank that. I also wanted to thank the city manager for really putting these packages together for us, and working with council to making sure that we achieve what we want to do. Our commitment has always been to put people first, and particularly in this pandemic. And I think, we're doing that. Secondly, what I also wanted to acknowledge is Mr. Robledo. I really want to say thank you for your words. The tone is different. I'm not knocking your predecessors, but the tone is certainly different. And we did meet some time ago, and I wanted to thank you for reaching out, and your comment on we're in this together, right? This is not a landlord issue or a tenant issue or even a state issue. It's all of us. We all have to work together, and we cannot work in silos. And if there's one thing that we have learned, particularly in this pandemic, that nothing happens if we work in silos and we just alienate one another. And so I just wanted to say thank you for your comments, because I know I have spoken to people who own properties, and I've spoken to folks regularly who own properties in some of Hayward's lowest income neighborhoods, and they're doing their best to work. We're all affected by this pandemic. Families are affected, landlords are affected, and so so we're doing our best to help both sides of this. So with that said, I'll proceed and I'll move this item.
Second.
All right, thank you. So the item has been moved by council. The staff recommendation is moved by Councilmember Salinas, seconded by Councilmember Marquez. And let's go to Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to add some direction to the motion if the maker is open. We are meeting on September 14th, a joint meeting with the school district. So that meeting is already spoken for. But I'd like to request that we have an informational item on September 21st, just to hear from staff the status of, and this is, whether it's our moratorium in place or it's going to be superseded by the state, just to get an informational item update so that if we need to revisit extending this, we would still have one more meeting and opportunity to do so on September 28th, because as I understand it, this will expire on September 30th if it gets adopted tonight. Is that correct? From staff?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's my recommendation. So I'm not going to specify exactly what we're going to cover, but just an informational item to bring this issue back to the council so we could decide on how to proceed should we need to have further discussions on this item.
Yeah, I accept it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
And I really appreciate staff's proactiveness on this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And we'll go to Councilmember Lamnon.
Thank you. I add my appreciation to our city staff for your work on this and monitoring what's going on at the state level as well. And also the thoughtful consideration around the commercial side. I had similar questions and concerns as were raised earlier. And, I think we're balancing we want to retain our businesses. I share Councilmember Zimeno's concern about especially the smaller businesses and the diversity of businesses. And there's a lot that we're doing to on that side. So I think I'm comfortable with this plan. I am a little frustrated with the slowness of getting the aid out since it's already been allocated. That's not us, and I'm not I'm not frustrated with our staff in any way. I do invite the rental housing owners to see, is there partnership opportunity there, especially for property owners that may have more than one resident who is in arrears. Could that be a way to expedite the process and work together on the issue? I do understand the issue for the smaller landlords who don't have as much room to absorb the delay, and getting this money out helps both sides of the equation. So interested in ways to do that. I'm also interested in, absolutely, we need to revisit the topic in September. We need to make sure that that everybody is safe and stable. God forbid we have another spike, et cetera, et cetera. I'm all for revisiting this issue and checking in. I also want to, in our messaging, to plan for it to end in September, assuming everybody is as safe and stable as possible, so that we start to encourage people do that planning, because at some point it will end. And so we do need people to make plans, to work with the resources out there, to talk with their landlords, et cetera, and then talk to the cities and the legal services, et cetera, that we refer to all the time to try and solve these issues so that it doesn't take anyone by surprise. So as much as we can do to continue to plan for that is possible. Deadlines sometimes are important. It's just a human nature thing. So I know there's still a lot of uncertainty, which is why I'm fine with the 3 months now, and looking forward to making sure that our community is as safe and stable as possible. And I think that takes a lot of different components. And I know that our city staff has been looking at all of those things. So I appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Councilmember Zermania.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, I like the proactivity and the progressiveness of our city staff on this particular issue. It's been transparent. We're talking about equity. I think that's something that's really very, very valuable for our residents, and I appreciate that. I'm wondering if eventually we could have some kind of a report, Jennifer or Christina, about who has been helped, how many have been helped, whereabouts have, how successful has the program been? Did we give money to some folks? Did we refuse money to other folks? I haven't seen that. I see numbers that something more concrete is really what I'm looking for. I don't know if it's possible. Maybe we can look into it. And again, thank you very much.
All right. Steph, want to comment on that? Oh. Okay. We'll go to Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. Primarily, I just want to say, again, thank you for the report. Thank you for also being ahead and just making sure that, again, we have the safety nets, as I often say, safety nets first. So having the safety net that, between what the state's going to do, the county's going to do, and what we end up doing. So I always appreciate that, foresight in that sense. That's one. I also want to thank our housing and homeless task force members. Primarily, I think that I'm excited about next month and, what the packages that, again, this staff has worked on so hard, and I'm very excited for that. July 13th for those who are interested in housing issues. And I personally just want to say that I do want the stats. I think I've stated that with the pretty much all the things we've done around COVID, the equity in the response, making sure that, when we do pay out, we are paying out in an equitable fashion, that we're focusing throughout the city, not just in one particular city or one apartment complex or something like that. But I also want to re-engage with the landlord community as well. I think that many of them have also been struggling, specifically the smaller landlords. not so much the larger landlords. And if there is turnover in regards to ownership and things like that, that's of interest to me as well. And then with some of the feedback, I'm not sure if this is possible, but I think it's important to understand what the pros and cons were of our program and some of the services that we have provided to residents and tenants in particular. Was it easy for them to get the cash to pay for their rent? Was it easy for them to go through the process? Did it really help them? How long did it help them? Things like that, just for future programming efforts if we were ever to, God forbid, get into another pandemic, if you will. I think that's incredibly important. And, I think to some of the members that spoke out from the collective and some of their input as well, I think that needs to be definitely taken into consideration moving forward as well. And I also agree with Councilmember Marquez's request for the September item. So anything that we can get with more data, more traction, that's of interest to me. So again, thank you guys for always looking out for residents. I appreciate the work that this department has done. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, staff, for the report. And I know there's been a lot of talk about landlords getting rental assistance and that being slow for them to receive. I was also wondering, is there any programs for them to receive grants for maintenance? Because I know people don't necessarily think of landlords actually having to take care of property, and that actually does impact renters. And so I just wanted to know if there's something that the city can do to assist with that, because that's where a lot of that rent actually goes to, is maintenance and mortgages and bills, but just trying to see how we can provide additional support if rental assistance is slow, while also looking after renters who live in those buildings.
So the funding we have available is to support the development of affordable housing, and other resources we have are specifically targeted to low-income households. The city does have a program for rehabilitation. I think it's only on single-family homes and not necessarily rental properties. And the other thing to consider is that because the rental assistance is pending, there's a likelihood that the property owners will be made whole, so that they should be able to address the deferred maintenance that may have occurred during this time period once they're made whole with the rent.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Actually, do you think that was, first of all, I appreciate Councilmember Salinas' motion and Councilmember Marquez's, amendment to ask for something to come back to us on by September 21st to let us know how we're doing at that point with either the state moratorium, and if there is a state one, that ending, or our own. And also the suggestion by Councilmember Wahab about getting some feedback, if we can, on how the programs that we have done during this time, especially in this area, how they worked. I know I've heard a lot of complaints about the state one and the 32-page application, and I don't think that we operate that way. But anyway, it would be good to know how we did. And then also on the request by Councilmember Andrews regarding maintenance. Regarding maybe some grants, if that was an area where some property owners were struggling. I don't know, it might be something we might consider when we're considering assistance to our business community, including our landlords. If that is something that there is a need, we might check with Mr. Robledo and the Rental Housing Association to see if that is something that would be helpful for the landlords, and maybe we could have a little bit of a program for that if there is that need. But otherwise, I will be supporting the motion, and I do thank staff for bringing this forward and thinking of our residents, because you can never tell what the state is going to do for sure. I suspect that they are going to go ahead and approve theirs, but we're covered anyway. What I really hope is that the state and the county both get their act together a little bit more to get the money that is available and has been allocated to help tenants and landlords through this time gets out there to actually do that. So I don't know what control we have over that, but I just hope that that happens. And with that, I'm going to ask for we have our city clerk, Ms. Lenz, back, I see. So we'll go back to you on item 12 in a moment. But if for now, you could conduct a roll call vote on the motion to support the staff recommendation, seconded by council member, that was made by council member Salinas, seconded by council member Marquez, with an amendment to bring the matter back to council for a check-in by September 21st to see if we need to do anything further at that point.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Sí.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes. And the motion passes with 7 aye votes, which I forgot to remind people right beforehand. It was stated earlier that we needed 5 votes to pass this as an emergency ordinance, but we got 7, so we're covered. It has been passed as an emergency ordinance that will go into effect immediately. So with that, we will return to item 12 and ask our city clerk to let us know what the results of the vote was.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that, sorry.
Am I on the right item? I'm sorry. We're going back to item 11. I'm going to clarify. We're going back to item 11 on our list regarding the Stratford Village Proposition 218 hearing, and we will hear about the vote on that. Sorry about that.
No worries, Mayor. I'm sorry. I'm trying to bring up this screen, and I hope you could see it. All right. So the canvas of the assessment ballots submitted by property owners is complete and was certified by Hayward City Clerk, and the votes are as follows. And as you could see on the screen, the total number of valid ballots processed, 65. Total number of yes votes processed, 20. Total number of no votes processed, 45. There were 2 invalid ballots. And the percentage of yes ballots, 30.77%. And the percentage of no, 69.23%. This means that we haven't received a 50% majority plus 1 in support of the proposed assessment. And with that, Mayor, I will let our staff, Denise Bloom, address the council. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Bloom.
All right, so the property owners have spoken, and they have voted against an increased assessment for Maintenance District 1 to fund the capital repairs for their district. So therefore, I will be returning to council on July 6th as a consent item to preliminarily approve the existing Maintenance District Number 1 engineer report and resolution of intention to hold a public hearing on July 20th to continue with the current assessment at $244 per year with no annual consumer price index adjustment.
So I have a couple of questions about this at this point. If they have rejected repair, the money that would have been necessary to repair this pump station, what is the assessment now going to be used for? Will there be any need for, what will the money be used for?
So originally we have original amount of $244 per year. So those funds pay for maintenance, operation, and administration of the current district. So currently we contract with Alameda County to perform the maintenance and operation for that district. So right now, the current assessment really just pays for the basic operation and maintenance per year and not any contribution or just a very small contribution to capital replacement and no contribution for the capital infrastructure repairs that are needed. So when we continue the current assessment of $244 per year, that pays for the ongoing annual operation, maintenance, and administration of the district, but does not fund a capital infrastructure repair. And it does not fund what we were hoping for, fund a more or less a loan repayment. So we had proposed sharing the cost with the property owners by providing them a low interest loan of $379,000 to be paid over 12 years at 2.25% interest or less from our city's stormwater fund. So that by giving that transfer of funds, we were proposing to offer them a low interest loan so that we can make those capital infrastructure repairs. However, they rejected that proposal, and they said they did not want to increase their assessment to pay back that payback loan. So the amount of the assessment that they do pay pays for ongoing operation and maintenance. It does not pay for the loan repayment.
Is it possible to continue the operation without?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that money will still be used to do that. And I guess, I would ask, I would think that then, therefore, though, is this the kind of thing that, and this may be a question for a city attorney's office, when selling a house in that district, would they have to disclose that risk of flood damage on, as a disclosure when selling a house in the district? Because I would think that is what is going to lead to, is that there is a very real, of course, a flood conditions would be welcome in most parts of our city right now, I think, or not flood conditions, but the rain that would lead to that. But in this area, it could be really seriously damaging. And I would wonder if, that would be a requirement that they would have to disclose that risk on in selling a house there. Is the city attorney available?
Or maybe.
Yes, Mayor.
Mr. Vahilia, yes.
Yeah, in terms of the disclosure, I'm sure that the property's location in a flood zone would be disclosed on a title report. And also would raise insurance issues to the extent that the properties are in a flood zone. In terms of the requirement for disclosure, I don't know that off the top of my head. I would assume that would be a significant fact related to the property that the sellers would have to disclose.
And who makes that determination, though? It's not the city that would make a determination that would have to be disclosed.
No, I would imagine that's between the realtors, and I would think that'd be part of the private transaction related to the sale of the property. I don't think it'd be anything that the city would be able to require.
Yeah, it does seem to me that people should be warned that there is that risk. So, okay, well, then we won't be lending the money to do the repair, and the situation will continue as it is. And so did we need any further action on this now tonight?
No.
You're coming back on July 6th for that, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So we can now move on to item number 15. We have come to item number 15 on our agenda. This is regarding the fiscal year 2022 salary plan adoption. So I will turn it over to Finance Director Clausen.
And actually, we are going to do a little slight change because this item also relates to, in particular, one item, the finance director's salary, along with a number of other executive salary adjustments. I'm going to take the lead on doing the PowerPoint presentation on behalf of the staff team. So if the council will indulge me, let me share my screen. Hopefully I can. I don't often, it's been a while since I've had to share my screen, so we'll see if I can get that. How does that look? Can everyone see that? Okay, great. So the item that is before you this evening is to adopt resolutions adjusting the fiscal year 2022 salary plan, and then also to consider restoration of some of the concessionary impact items that were given up by employees in the last fiscal year as a result of the COVID pandemic and its impact on the city finances. This is not for all of the groups this evening, but this is for the groups that we've been able to negotiate an agreement and a new side letter with. And so I will walk through the various items of this agenda item. So first is the concessions payback. As you'll recall, last year, we went to each of the bargaining groups and asked for concessions. Our firefighters, Local 1909, fire chiefs, our SEIU, Local 1021, Local 21, IFPTE, the Hayward Association of Management Employees, our police management union, our executive team, and our unrepresented employees all provided concessions to the city. Our Police Officers Association did not last year. So this is only for the discussion related to those bargaining groups that did provide concessions. So there were two concession items that were contemplated by most of the groups. The first was a furlough, which is unpaid leave that employees took last year. And so the basic concept behind the payback is that employees shall receive a one-time payment that would be based on the number of furlough hours that the employee actually took off. And then the payback would be at the pay rate effective at the time that furlough leave was taken. The other option that employees had was to forego or delay a COLA, a cost of living adjustment that would have been due to employees July 1st of 2020. And so those employees will receive a 2% COLA effective the pay period, including July 1st, 2021, and that they will receive a one-time payment equal to 2% of their annual base pay, which basically recoups some of the cost that they gave up from the last year. So here's the non-executive employee groups who did give up concessions this last year. So Fire Union, Local 1909, and the Fire Chiefs forewent their 2% COLA. And we have negotiated a side letter with them to repay that. Our unrepresented non-executive employees did most of those, with the exception of a couple positions, gave an 80-hour furlough, and that payback can be adopted by council resolution. And then as you see here, Hayward Association of Management Employees gave an 80-hour furlough, Police Management was an 80-hour furlough, and SEIU and Local 21 both provided 35 hours of furlough. And so we are in current conversations with those groups regarding the concession repayment. For the executive team, we had very specific, since there are only a handful of those executive team department heads. You can see here the department heads that gave the 80-hour furlough versus the two executive team members who gave up their 2% COLA last year. In addition, so as we mentioned, so in this situation, those employees who gave up that COLA will get the COLA effective July 1 of 2021, and will also receive that one-time payment. And the employees who took the furlough hours will receive an hour-for-hour repayment of the furlough hours that they actually took during this fiscal year. So the next item that is on as part of this agenda item is the actual previously negotiated cost of living adjustments for different groups for fiscal year 2022. These are contracts, MOUs that were in effect, and that we will be implementing these increases consistent with these previously negotiated agreements. So our Hayward Police Officer Association had a negotiated increase of 2.5%. Police management had a negotiated increase of 3%. Local 1909, their increase will be 4%. Their previously negotiated increase for 2022 was 2%, but they will get an additional 2% that will be for their concession payback. Similarly, for the fire officers and the fire chiefs is that same situation. For the unrepresented executives, which is all of the department directors, they will receive a salary increase of 2%, with the exception of the fire chief and director of finance, who will receive 4%, which includes the payback of their 2% cost of living adjustment from last fiscal year. In addition, we did market studies. We do market studies consistently for a number of our positions throughout the city organization to ensure that we can remain competitive, that we have internal equity between our managers and employees that report to them. And then also just looking at consistency with salaries and other agencies. So at this point, I'm recommending that we adjust and increase the salary range for 3 of our department head positions, the Director of Development Services, the Director of Finance, and the Director of Maintenance Services, so that all 3 of those positions would be increased to the same salary level as the Director of Library Services. So you can see here, the Director of Library Services has a top step hourly rate of $102.92. So that means the Director of Development Services would receive a 0.71% increase, equity increase. Director of Finance would get 2.81%, and then the Director of Maintenance Services would get a 4.23% increase. And the total fiscal impact of that for fiscal year 2022 is a little more than $21,000. So with that, I'm happy to answer any council questions, and then we recommend that the council adopt the resolution with the amended fiscal year 2022 salary plan, and along with that, resolutions allowing me as city manager to execute the side letter for concessions repayment with 1909 and other implementation mechanisms needed to repay those concessions to employees that have negotiated the repayment. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I will ask if there are any council questions regarding this item. Not seeing any hands raised, so I'm going to open the public hearing on this item and or public comment. I'm sorry, I see council. We'll go back to Councilmember Wahab.
It's for comments.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm going to open the public hearing, and we do have some comments. So we'll go to that, and we will start with, are you ready, Madam City Clerk? We will start with John Varga.
Thank you so much, Mayor Halliday. John Varga, representative of employees represented by IFPTE Local 21. I'm so pleased to hear the city manager reference negotiating the terms of a payback. We welcome the offer to make those paybacks. We look forward to receiving them, considering the city does seem to be recognizing that the workers that offered those sacrifices during a difficult time deserve to be recognized for that sacrifice. We certainly hope that all the workers in the city of Hayward get that same recognition. So thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Next we have, it looks like what I'm reading is Children's Department Hayward, so I'm not quite sure.
I think that's me, Mayor. Cheryl Pennick.
Okay, go ahead. And who is that? You.
Sorry. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and city staff. My name is Cheryl Pennick. I live at 21239 Gary Drive in Hayward. I am the Hayward chapter president of IFPTE Local 21. You are definitely owed the compensation that you originally negotiated. We fully support that. Making yourselves whole before making the plus employees from SEIU, HAIM, and IFPTE whole, or at least giving us your plan, your actual plan for making us whole, is not equitable, and it undermines the trust between labor and city management. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other public comments, so we will close the public hearing and go back to council and go to Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. One, I do just appreciate staff working on this. To the public comment that was made, one, I haven't seen you in the budget meeting in a while, so I'm glad to hear your voice. We have publicly stated that we are planning to make everybody whole, and we hope to do that. It's just, the conversations with labor takes a little bit longer than it does for, executives or so forth. It's one or two people. So that is why the move has taken a little bit more time. I'm happy to move this forward. I think that council was very clear in making sure that, we are fair and equitable in the sense that we always turn to our staff to make concessions when we are in a bind. I think everybody on this council really appreciates the efforts of staff working with us, especially as we did not know what the pandemic held. I don't think anybody thought it would take over a year to even get out of the pandemic, as well as the impacts it has in the lives that were lost. So I really just want to honor every single staff member that has worked for the city throughout the last couple months, the efforts around the city, the contributions made, and I genuinely want to honor the commitment I've made in making sure that everybody is whole. So I appreciate this, and I definitely move this item. Thank you.
Okay. Was that Councilmember Marquez? Yeah.
Councilmember Lamnin.
I'm sorry. Okay, Councilmember. There you are. Okay. The item has been moved by Councilmember Wahab, seconded by Councilmember Lamnin. Would you like to speak to it, Councilmember Lamnin?
I have nothing to add. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add? I will just add that, yes, to echo Councilmember Wahab in making the motion that I know that we do intend to do this. This is a step we take every year regarding these contracts, which, do not involve, I don't know. Maybe I'll ask the city manager to comment on what the plan is going forward. I know that the person who spoke is from one of the bargaining groups that we are negotiating a new contract with, and that it would be our intent to take all of this up, in those terms. Is that correct?
We've actually offered multiple opportunities for all of the groups to meet and discuss the concessions repayment. So we're waiting to hear back. Our HR team has been, I think there's been, the teams are negotiating the successor agreement contract for Local 21, SEIU, and HAIM. But then we've also offered opportunities to meet to discuss the concessions repayment. So we're HR staff stands ready to have those conversations and discussions whenever we receive a response.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you for that information. And I would encourage, the person who spoke and anyone else who's interested in this to certainly follow up in that way. Okay, so with that, if there are no other comments on this issue, I'll ask for a roll call vote from the city clerk on the motion that was made by Councilmember Wahab and seconded by Councilmember Lamnin.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Yes.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes, and the motion carries with 7 aye votes. Moving right along to item number 16. I expect that we will, this is regarding the city manager's employment agreement. So I expect we will hear from Mr. Clausen on this one.
And actually, Mayor, I'm going to exit the meeting since this is related to my employment agreement. So if someone could text me when the item is over, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll do that and see you back later. Okay, Mr. Clausen, go ahead.
All right, and I'm going to share my screen. I've got a very short PowerPoint presentation here. All right, so we're here to discuss the city manager's employment agreement. Looking for a couple of actions tonight from council. Actually, one action, but a couple of items included in that action. First is similar in a concession payback of the 2% COLA that the city manager gave up during fiscal year 2021, and to go ahead and restore that moving forward, and then also a one-time payment equal to 2% of her base salary for the last fiscal year to make up for the amount that she gave up during the fiscal year when the city was facing such uncertainty, as most employees did. And looking to make her whole in the same way that council has committed to all the groups that gave up something during the concession. The second piece is a little different. Looking to update amend the agreement, and Kelly has graciously accepted or is proposing to take two one-time payments of 2%, one at July 1, the other at January 1st, 2022, during this fiscal year, to help to offset the ongoing impacts of her increases to her contract. The other is that she's asking for the ability to have the ability to cash out leave in a way similar to unrepresented management and the city clerk and city attorney of 120 hours per year. So all of that is a long way to say that these are the terms that we're seeking to amend Kelly's agreement moving forward, and ask that council consider changing that agreement. Happy to answer any questions. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Are there any questions at this point? I'm not seeing any hands raised. So I will open public comment on this item. Again, I'm not seeing hands raised on that. So I will close public comment and entertain and Councilmember Salinas.
All moved.
Second.
All right, so the recommendation as outlined by Director Clausen has been made by, a motion for that has been made by Councilmember Salinas and seconded by Councilmember Cermeño. And I'll just add that I want to make clear that these lump sums are really in lieu of cost of living increases that we would probably be giving, and they actually giving the money in a lump sum saves the city a lot in terms of future PERS obligations, retirement benefits that will be paid out at the end of employment. And so, I just appreciate that. The city manager, asking for well-deserved, after this year, I believe, well-deserved, cost of living salary increase, but asking for it in terms of these lump sum payments, which actually do not increase her overall salary and therefore save us money in the long run in terms of our long-term obligations. So with that, on that motion, again, by Councilmember Salinas and seconded by Councilmember Salinas, your hand is up. Did you want to say anything? Okay. So I'll ask our city clerk. The motion was seconded by Councilmember Cermeño, and I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Aye.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes, and the motion carries with 7 aye votes. All right, now we've come to item 17, which is regarding the city attorney's concession repayment. And so I believe Director Clausen will be giving us the report, and I would think that our city attorney will be recusing himself from or stepping out of the room, and that we will have another city attorney. Should we need one on this?
It looks like, yes, Assistant City Attorney Sadelnikov is on the call if we need him. So.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. So with that, please go ahead.
If it's okay with you, Mayor and Council, I'd like to combine items 17 and 18. Essentially, it's the same information, but rather than presenting it twice and taking two votes, unless Council would like to split the votes.
That is certainly okay with me. I can't imagine that anyone will object. Seeing no hands going up there. And I would then assume that our city clerk will be recusing herself, and again, turning things over perhaps to
our deputy city clerk, Mary Mountlocks.
Okay. We'll have Ms. Mountlocks.
I'm assuming I'm going to leave the meeting. I hope I'm not ending the meeting for all.
I hope that too. That wouldn't be good, but
maybe I'll just close my video and I'll mute myself, if that's okay. Okay, thank you.
All right.
I'll once again share my screen. I've got an incredibly a short presentation here again. Essentially, what we're asking for from council to consider is for both the city attorney and the city clerk, essentially to restore the COLA that they gave up, that each of them gave up this last fiscal year. I'm having trouble getting my slideshow going here. All right, and so what we're asking is for a one-time, similar to other employees around the city. The city attorney and city clerk chose to give up their 2% COLA that was contractually obligated back in July of 2020. What we're asking for council to consider tonight is a one-time payback in a lump sum of 2% to both the city attorney and city clerk to make them whole, and then a restoration of the 2% COLA that they gave up last fiscal year that would be effective on July 1, 2021 and be restored to make them whole for the concessions that they made during the pandemic. Happy to answer any questions. That's about as straightforward as it can be. On this slide, you can see that the fiscal impact of the 2% payback would have on the city's general fund a total of approximately $7,700.
Okay. Are there any council questions about this item? Seeing no hands raised, I'm going to open public comment. I do not see any hands raised from the remaining attendees, so we'll move back to council and entertain a comments or a motion. Councilmember Salinas.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that one was Councilmember Andrews, right? It's a second. Okay, got it. You do it so quickly. So we have a motion by Councilmember Salinas, seconded by Councilmember Andrews to support the recommendations on both items 17 and 18 regarding the concessions repayments for the city attorney and the city clerk. So with that, and seeing no other requests to speak, I will ask Ms. Mountlocks if you will conduct a roll call vote on this one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews?
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnon?
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas?
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarmeno?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Yes, and the motion carries 7-0 on those two items. And I will recall the I guess I should have recalled her earlier. Is she back, the city manager?
I'm here.
Okay, all right. Forgot to do that. So
I got texts from like 3 other people, so we're good.
Okay. You had your staff covered anyway. So
yeah.
And we can now for the remainder of the meeting, which isn't too much. Can you let the city clerk and the city both know that they can come back, the city attorney and the city clerk. So with that, we will move on now to, while she's texting,
I think Miriam's back, and I think Michael will be joining shortly. So they both.
And I'll turn it over to you for city manager comments this evening.
Sure. I actually have a number that I just wanted to go through quickly. First is, if you haven't noticed, there is a strange machine that now sits on the side of City Hall that I thought was an ATM, but it is an outdoor payment kiosk. So anyone can come and pay their water bill at the outdoor kiosk so whenever City Hall is closed, just a way to make City Hall more accessible so people don't have to wait till City Hall is open. So, and that accepts cash as well, as my understanding. And so you don't have to use a credit card. So if people need to drop off cash and want to do it, it looks just like an ATM. And so if you're looking at the front of City Hall, it's in between the rotunda and the doors that are sort of butting up to B Street. So check it out. It's really cool. And kudos to the finance director and his team for getting that quickly purchased and installed to help while we've been shut down.
So
it's been closed.
I haven't seen it. It's not near the doors where you would ordinarily come into City Hall. It's
facing the plaza. So if you know where we usually, like, if there's where the lights, when we change the colors of the lights on the front of City Hall, it's almost like directly below that.
Okay. Would we be putting a sign out front on the door where people usually come in to let them know that that's there?
Yeah, we'll have a sign. We're also working with Chuck and his team to get some information out to the public, not only that it exists, but also how to use it so that folks know how to go about conducting business with it. And it'll be pretty cool. Folks won't need to bring their bill every single time. They can get their bill through email and electronically, so that they can essentially scan whether it be their phone or tablet under the kiosk and be able to pay their bills that way.
Wow. 21st century. Okay.
So that was announcement number one. The second, I wanted to just acknowledge our economic development team, the Downtown Hayward Improvement Association and the Chamber of Commerce, who are going to be hosting a Together for Hayward downtown reopening event on Saturday, July 10th. Starting at noon. It'll run through the afternoon. So please come out and enjoy and celebrate our downtown businesses. It is almost 1 year to the day when we had our street closures for downtown to support the businesses, to allow the businesses to open, restaurants to put tables in the middle of the street on B Street. And so it's really nice a year later to be able to celebrate reopening together. So I hope folks will come out and support our businesses. Another item in downtown, I know we've had a lot of conversations about public restrooms in downtown, and we have made some modifications to the public restroom in the City Hall parking garage that is at the corner of B and Watkins, and it is now open for use. So hopefully it will not be vandalized as it has been in the past with these modifications, and so that will allow us to keep it open. So that bathroom and restroom is accessible for individuals who may need to use it. And then lastly, some announcements from our awesome library team. Our library summer reading program has started and will continue through the end of July. And library users can win prizes for reading or just being read to. So that's great. Lunch lunch at the library also started as of yesterday, and that allows school-age children 18 years of age and under to stop by the downtown library between 11 a.m. and noon, Monday through Friday, and pick up a free healthy lunch. No signups or ID are needed, and the lunch program continues through July 28th. And then you can also go to the city's website under Public Library and find out more about all of these fun programs. So I think those are my announcements this evening. And I just want to, since I didn't get to say a thank you to the council for approving the amendments to my employment agreement, it is an honor and a privilege to serve this community and to live here. And I'm grateful to, this last year has been challenging and amazing and rewarding. And I'm looking forward to many more years serving the city of Hayward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and we appreciate your service during the last year, especially, and yes, throughout your tenure here, but especially during the last year. And I just wanted to clarify that downtown reopening, that was Saturday, July 10th, right? Yeah, so be there. And that brings us to council reports and announcements. I see that Council Member Andrews has her hand raised, and I just want to thank her before she starts for her great role in helping in organizing our Juneteenth, our very first but not last Juneteenth celebration on City Hall Plaza on Saturday. It was a great event. So I will let you go ahead and make whatever comment you wanted to make, but thank you so much for your work on that.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to acknowledge that I think it was actually the first time I met all of you at City Hall. So I'm going to count that as my first meeting with you all.
There, right?
And we got a picture of it, so it's great. Again, I want to thank Kaiser, Corbett Area, Eden Health District, La Familia, and Mariela Ferreira, Aaron Ortiz, and Anna Apodaca. I also want to thank Stax Records, who donated 2 DJs for the event, and DJs Beats Me and DJ Mighty Juice. You guys can look them up on Instagram if you want to have a DJ at your next shindig. Also, thank you to the Chamber, Farmers Market, and then just a few people who really helped out at the event. Diane Castleberry from AC Transit, as well as Mark Williams, AC Transit Director, Dorothy Dominguez from Treasures Unleashed, and Esther Lopez, because she kept reminding me to keep my cell phone on me throughout the day. So thank you for that, Esther, because I've lost it a couple of times. I also wanted to thank both chiefs, Hayward PD and Fire. Thank you, Fire, for showing kiddos the fire truck, and thank you, Hayward PD. Your presence was felt in a different way, and I appreciate you keeping the event safe. Also, thank you to Animal Services. Apparently, the dog food was a hit, and people want you to do that more often. And special thank you to Maintenance and Development Services, who guided me throughout the paperwork process and then provided all these things for the event that I didn't even think I needed, but you guys already had it. So I really appreciate you all doing that. And then all the electeds that showed up to the event. And I just want to read this post from Hayward's finest, Armand Harris. Since the news did not want to talk about good news of Hayward that came out that day, I got some good news from a Facebook post from Armand Harris. And he said, yesterday I attended Hayward's Juneteenth celebration. It was a small event that focused on jobs, health, and housing. And organizations and agencies such as the ones I've listed, including HARD, BART, Hayward Historical Society, and the NAACP of Hayward and Hayward Fire Department were present. Congressman Eric Swalwell was also in attendance. I had an opportunity to speak to him. In addition, I spoke with city council members and Rick Hatchard of HARD Board. There were 2 DJs that played a mix of R&B, reggae, and soca. When the Caribbean rhythms came on, I began to move and groove in my wheelchair. I even had 2 beautiful ladies dance with me. There were many, especially the women and girls dressed in modern African fashion. The colors and patterns were extraordinary. Lest I forget, I ran into my friend Mimi Stella Dean, a fellow gardener, and my big cuz Randy. Randy and I are both of Clan Stewart, and of course we spoke of things Scottish. Well, that was my day. I hope you all enjoyed your day, and happy Father's Day to all the dads and uncles and guys that served as mentors. So just thought I'd share that positive Facebook post to you all, and thank you again for your support.
Thank you. that was basically my experience too. So yeah, thanks. Thanks to the Facebook poster there. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Salinas.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, big props to Councilmember Andrews. Great job. In Hayward, yes, all kids get a free lunch all summer long. And so, for about I think we're on year 12 now with Let's Do Lunch Hayward and Breakfast too. So we've, it started on Monday, yesterday. And so at several sites all across the city, kids can just go get a grab and go lunch and have lunch. And there's no questions asked. All you gotta do is check a box and get a lunch. So that started on Monday. Also, what is back? We didn't do it last summer, but we're doing it this summer. Words for Lunch. Words for Lunch is open again. It started yesterday. It's on Mondays and Wednesdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Now, it's a little different this year. What we're doing for Words for Lunch is kids will go to the Hayward Public Library and they'll go to Tyrell Elementary School. They'll pick up a lunch, a grab and go lunch from 11 to 12 p.m. And then what they'll do is that they'll go home and they'll log on to story time from 1 to 2. And so stories are online. We're not in person. We're not huddled up in reading circles and doing puppet shows and stuff like that. However, we are doing that online. So next year gives us something to look forward to when we return back face to face. And no doubt we'll be back at the park. But I just wanted to make that announcement. Register your kids today. If you go to the Hayward Public Library, all the registration information is online, and all you got to do is register, and you'll get a link. Other than that, have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you for your work over the last 12 years. Wow, 12 is what you said? In organizing that, I think that it means a lot. I'm sorry we can't really do it in person this year, but thank you for making the effort to have the lunches and to provide the entertainment for the kids. Councilmember Lamnon.
Thank you. Yes, cheers to our hardworking council members, and many thanks to staff for the sacrifices made over the last year, to our city officials, our CAOs, for your hard work. Thank you, everybody. A couple personal announcements. Wanted to let folks know that Angela and I are switching places. So thank you, Councilmember Andrews, for taking on representing the city on our East Bay Dischargers Authority as of next month. And I will stay on as the alternate, but it's really been a privilege to represent the city on that board. There's some really interesting projects there. And if you want more details, let us know. And then also continuing the work to make sure we have a fair and inclusive redistricting process. Alameda County Board of Supervisors is anticipated to take up the item and start talking about the outreach plan and potentially hiring a consultant. And so that will be we think it will be part of the Board of Supervisors meeting next Tuesday. So if you'd like more information or like to speak up about that process, please let me know. Thanks. Or you can check it out, at www.alcoredistricting.org. All one word, lowercase. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And thank you for your work on that issue, because I know you have been working hard on it. Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you, Mayor. I also just want to highlight Juneteenth and specifically give kudos to Councilmember Andrews. That was one event that I literally left and went home and told other folks about it. It was a positive event, number one. I feel like, Councilmember Andrews, all the people that spoke and were there, and the MC did a great job as well, very upbeat. And, you know, I felt included. I think other people felt included. I looked at staff, a lot of the staff that, you know, basically is working on a Saturday. They seemed to have a lot of fun. Everyone was just positive, good environment. And I'm sure that was also because, you know, we had our very first, you know, let's say outing since COVID. And so it was great timing as well. I think that with the animal services, I will say my favorite, if I still had my puppy, would be the harnesses that I thought were cool that they were also handing out. But I do just want to say that was a great positive event. I hope that we spend a little bit more time next year and making it, you know, bigger and better as well. All the people that, you know, not only spoke, but were setting up booths and all the partnerships. I think that's exactly the type of events that we need. Very family oriented, very fun, very positive. And I genuinely enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time there. And I think based on all the conversations I had and the faces I saw, I think everyone enjoyed it. So I do just want to highlight that and commend you and everybody on that team that has worked on it, and thank the city for sponsoring that as well. So kudos to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Zermeño.
Thank you, Mayor. Street parties is being organized in August, and the Mariachi Festival in the second Friday of September is also being organized. And I think that's about time that we go back to it. And if you are interested in sponsoring a mariachi, please let me know. And you all have a great week.
All right. With that, I will echo the comments on Juneteenth, and I agree with Councilmember Wahab that I think that under any circumstances, this would have been a great event. But I think because it really was like we're back, you know, we're back together and event. It was the first time we really have been able to enjoy, I think, an event like that, certainly in the downtown on City Hall. And it just felt so good to be with people, and you could just feel the spirit of that. So great launch to our return to normal. And may we have many more of these, and I hope to be there for lots of them. And then I just also, I wanted to thank the Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to deliver the annual State of the City address this year, which I did yesterday morning at Life Chiropractic College, where there were about 6 tables with about 12 or 15 people sitting at them, maybe at the most. It was really intended as a hybrid event. So my understanding is it is available on YouTube. Beyond that, I can't help you, but if you contact Kim Huggett at the Chamber of Commerce, he can let you know exactly how to view this just amazing presentation that I made. No, I really, I want to thank the staff for their help in, especially Media and Community Relations, Chuck Finney and Zach Ubadi, and a new member of that team, Arendira Garcia, I believe, who really helped out a lot in preparing that presentation. And it included a really good PowerPoint with a few little film clips of events that we've had during the past year, like the downtown opening last summer was featured. I believe the testing center, information about the Stack Center was one of them, and there's another one that I'm forgetting. But anyway, so that's out there available somehow. I think it can be viewed online. And with that, we will not be meeting next week. And at least we will not be having a regular council meeting next week. I believe we have a closed session scheduled as part of our ongoing evaluations of our council appointed officers. But we will have our next regular meeting of the City Council on July 6th. So in the meantime, I want to wish everyone a happy 4th of July. That's coming up. And we'll see you on July 6th. And with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you. Good night.